Gus? He's not here. Claire?
I'm here. I am attending remotely, but I'm a participating voting member. I have a COVID exposure.
I'm just going to count you as here. Kimberly? Is Kimberly here?
Don't see her.
Okay. Not. Ann?
I'm here. I'm sorry, I am homesick, but I am here.
Was your counters voting?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just going to put a check. Greg, you're here?
Here.
Dan?
Yes, here.
And me.
So we have a quorum. I was going to announce what Claire said. We got an opinion from Tim Boss. I emailed it out about an hour before the meeting that allows people who have been exposed to contagious diseases to attend remotely and count as voting members. So that was already taken care of before the meeting started. Our first order of business, give me a second to manipulate this computer. Would normally be reports from government agencies. Jim Pruitt was going to show up. Jim, are you here? From the Harbor District.
Can you hear me?
Thank you, Jim. Do you need to share your screen? Do we try that?
I do not.
Okay, go ahead.
Good evening again. Thank you for allowing me to provide you an update. It's always exciting to participate in the MCC. We're still doing great things at the Harbor District, even though we've encountered a few more hurdles to jump over. I wouldn't say roadblocks, but I'll just say hurdles to jump. And I'll go through the different projects we're working on. With respect to the new retail center, after a public meeting, the initial design team put together a few different concepts, and that was presented to the Harbor Board at last month's general meeting.
Election fraud.
And everyone please make sure their microphone is muted.
Mute your microphone. Okay, go ahead, Jim.
With respect to the resale center, after a public meeting several months ago, the initial design team put together a few different designs and different locations to be considered. The board reviewed that and received public comment at the public meeting and returned the project back to the architects to do some more work and assigned an ad hoc committee to review the new work that they're doing to bring it back to the board on June 21st. So that's where that's one's standing right now. The architects are reworking design options based on the input that they received at last month's meeting. That's Joanne ADA restroom. The project is moving forward at full steam right now and should be completed next month. We delayed the construction of the restroom until October 31st at the request of the tenants because October 31st was supposed to be a big day for them. So we kept it delayed until November 1st beginning. Of course, we had rain and more rain, which delayed the project. And then we also had unexpected items below the ground, such as gas pipes and water pipes that were not properly laid out. So we're documenting those now and unforeseen electrical upgrades that are required by the county. But that project is moving full steam and should be done again by next month. The coastal trail, where the trail actually ends where the sidewalk ends, they're above Perch Beach, and as we all know, you have to either walk out into traffic on Pillar Point Boulevard or go down the dirt path in front of Half Moon Bay Kayak over to Johnson Pier Drive. We have plans and we're working on designs to extend the coastal trail from the end of the sidewalk down to Johnson Pier Drive, in front of Half Moon Bay Kayak and in front of the new location for Ocean Cider. We intend to put in a new crosswalk there at the current end of the trail now over to the parking lot in C2, where there are ADA parking spots that will be repainted and resized to meet with requirements. When we start that depends on how fast we can get the design done and the building permits issued, but we're actively working on that. Surfers Beach restroom and green space project. Everybody's seen the tractors and the fencing going up and the big holes being dug for water and sewage. That project's moving ahead full steam also. During the last time I presented this project to the MCC, several questions were asked. And to answer a few of those questions, the graphics, those graphics will be used on the outside of the building. The external tile, the walls, we got pictures of the samples of the tiles. They are not flat subway tiles. They are, there is a texture to them, but they will be tiles that will go going up. Lights will be dark sky. We cannot redesign the west facing wall as the design's already been completed and approved.
Recording in progress.
The tree will be significantly cut back and removed. No trees will be planted as part of this project. And the trees along Highway 1 above the RV park will be significantly trimmed back as part of the CDP. The stainless steel, we looked at that for the shower pools, and there were some comments about the shiny pools. Going back with the architect and the designers, the stainless steel is the only product that will work in that environment and last, so we don't have to replace it very often. And the same thing with the concrete benches. I did look into the benches because there was a request that some of the benches be made out of wood. Architects and the design team say if we put wood benches in that location, they'll be erode very quickly or rot very quickly because they're exposed to the sea 24 hours a day, 7 days a week there, and will get waterlogged and rotted quickly. So the concrete was our only option there. And I see Sid has her hand up, and do we want to take questions now or at the end?
At the end, Jim, I have something too.
The harbor dredge and the surface beach replenishment, we ran into permitting issues, but fully expect to begin that project in the spring of 2024. We're currently working with the Marine Sanctuary and the State Fish and Wildlife to finalize permitting issues, and we hope to put that contract out for bid by the end of the year, with construction beginning in the spring of 2024. And that project will bring the dredging of the harbor, the eelgrass mitigation, and then the surface beach replenishment pilot project. And I noticed that shoreline protection is on the agenda for tonight, and you may find it of some interest that at the San Mateo County Harbor District Board meeting on May 17th, One Shoreline will be making a presentation on their findings and potential solutions to address sea level rise on Half Moon Bay. And I encourage you and everyone else here to attend and participate in that meeting. Barring any questions, that's our update.
Jim, you addressed the dredging question. I know Catherine Slater Carter had expressed frustration at I think it was a SAM meeting about that. So you handled that. Just a side question. We had a valued community member die earlier this year, Harold Herman. I had heard there were memorial benches available somewhere in the harbor. If that's true, could you send me whatever
navigate
Recording
within
in
that portion of the
progress.
harbor, which it should be available. So that answers the one question about, is it required for safe navigation in the harbor? It is, if we want safe navigation throughout the entire harbor. And what was your second question?
What exactly is the problem that's delaying the permit?
California State Wildlife has specific questions about specific species in which that may or may not be in the area, and asking us to address those specific species that they have questions about. The Marine Sanctuary, they didn't necessarily want to review all the permits or review their permit first before everybody else reviewed and approved the project. Now that most of the agencies have approved the project, the Marine Sanctuary is taking up the review process, and we're working through that review process right now. And they're interested in everything from the quality of the sediment to how it's going to be piped over the breakwater to how the slurry pipes will be laying on the beach and exactly what those flows will be and how much and when and where they'll go. They're asking their questions and we're providing those answers to them on a timely basis, and they're getting back to us on a timely basis. So I don't see any more major delays beyond this year, and that we should, or we will be able to pump sand over the wall onto Surfers Beach by spring of next year.
Next council member question, Dan Haggerty.
Yes, thank you for your report, Mr. Pruitt. Just some quick comments. I did not see any postings in the community regarding the last meeting on the retail center. Did the Harbor District put any community postings up to alert the community? I was told by the architect that this would be a practice. I did see the ones at the first meeting, but I didn't see any sense. Were any postings put up to alert the community about the meeting?
About the meeting, our next board meeting?
No, the meeting you mentioned, don't know the date, when you discussed the retail center last.
Yeah, if you remember, I'm sure you do, we had a public meeting several months ago.
No, I'm not referring to that one. I'm referring to the last time it was discussed.
Last time it was discussed was at our general meeting in April. And I don't see it coming before the board again until June.
Okay. The point is, your meetings are held in the middle of the day, and everybody's got lives, giving attention to their own stuff. It's very difficult for the community to know that you're going to be discussing, the retail center proposals, which will, have a dramatic effect to the community, whatever you choose to build there. I want to
in response to that, I will look into holding a public meeting between now and the June meeting for the public to be able to review what the architect will be presenting to the board.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to reiterate that myself and other members of the community believe that the general parking at the new Surfers Beach parking lot, the bathroom project, is drastically inadequate. And as far as the reflective, the stainless steel shower, could be wrong, but I thought I read somewhere in conditions of approval that there should be no reflective material. I just want to say that, there was a galvanized shower that was there for a good number of years. It functioned well. And I think that there are other opportunities. There are other methods to create a shower that, other than having a highly reflective stainless steel pipe in the direct line of the daylight, the sunset, everything. lastly, I want to say, yeah, I'm really shocked at the intensity and the level of blue rich light coming off the parking lot of this building that we're in right now, the Harbor District office building. Mr. Pruitt, have you come by at night and seen the level of light that's coming off of the new lights that were installed in the parking lot on the 2 levels? Have you witnessed them yourself?
They are bright.
Yeah, they're extremely bright, and I was a bit shocked to see them after we had we had some Sierra Club, Autobahn. We had that meeting in the past, and you asked for the summary of the International Dark Sky 5 principles of responsible lighting, which I submitted to you, and the lighting down in this building, the parking lot is, it's not even close to the recommendations of the International Dark Sky Association.
So that was a comment, not a question.
We'll look into that and get right back to you.
All right.
Thank you.
Dan, you also have the opportunity to bring this up to the retreat. We have another citizen with me expressing concerns. I see a hand raised in the office by a newly arrived council member, Kimberly Williams, and for the record, both Gus and Kimberly are now attendees of the meeting, so we got a full roster. Okay, Kimberly, your question?
I just want to reiterate what Dan said. I have concerns about the coast side conforming to the Dark Skies Initiative, and I would like to see the Harbor District and other agencies within the county take this more seriously and address these concerns on the coast side.
Question for the audience, Claire, could you hear Kimberly clearly when she was speaking? I can't hear you, Claire.
I have to unmute myself and tell you, yes, I heard her.
Okay, that's good. I wanted to be sure the microphones were working. All right, now comments from the public. Sid Young, you were first.
Jim, thank you so much. That was a great recap. I did attend that Harbor District meeting where they threw it back to the architect on the different things. And Dan, you didn't miss that much, but I'm sure you can watch it on YouTube. I think maybe, for the future, you could post the agendas on Nextdoor or something so that people can be aware of the next upcoming meeting. Did I hear you say you were going to have a public meeting before the next Harbor District board meeting to review all those retail center designs that before the architect shows them to the board?
I hope to get the new input or the new drawings and ideas from the architect, and then looking to host a public meeting before it goes back to the board.
Okay, good. I hope you'll let MCC know when that is, because sometimes I don't always tune into your guys' agendas as much as I should. But one thing
we don't post on Nextdoor, but we do work with the co-side and the Buzz. There we go.
Oh, good.
We do work with the Buzz to get our information out.
Yay, Buzz. Okay, my main question that before you started talking, I wanted to ask about the dredging and the replenishment of Surface Beach. I noticed that the staircase is down to the beach from Highway 1 is damaged now, and somebody on that thread of Nextdoor posted that they made the eelgrass was the last thing that I posted, that I'd heard that the eelgrass was what was holding up the dredging project, but another person who I guess is in the know said it was black abalone, but you did not mention that. So I just wanted to see what's the real deal on what's the actual holdup besides permitting and all of that.
Black abalone is a species that the California Fish and Wildlife is asking us about in our plan on protecting any found species or any found Black-owned abalone or their.
But they don't know about a colony of it. They know about the eelgrass in the harbor, right? But they
know
don't.
about the eelgrass in the harbor. We were able to work through many of those permitting issues. We're now working on different species that Fish and Wildlife has brought up, and one of those species is black abalone.
Ah, it never ends, does it? Well, thank you. Oh, I have one other question, and this may not be the Harbor District, but I was driving down Capistrano today, and there's a median between the Oceana Hotel and the harbor, and it's like about 3 feet high in weeds. And I wondered, is that something that the county DPW is supposed to take care of, or the hotel owner, or the Harbor District shares that responsibility? Do you know?
It is not a harbor responsibility. I know that.
Thank
All
you.
right, so we have to get going. We have a
That's
lot.
it. I'm off. Thank you, Jim.
A question for Jim Pruitt, Michelle.
No, I just wanted to make sure that everybody understands that all of the public agencies meetings are on Coastside Buzz. They're all in one place. And then they are shared to Facebook with the agenda. And then on top of that, it goes to my MailChimp platform where all of the calendar meetings are posted. So there's a lot of places where you can find out what's going on. And if there's something that is specific to a particular agenda item that's really important, then I post that separately. And it goes to the same streams, first to my website, then to Facebook, and then to MailChimp.
Okay, I have to keep this moving for a reason that will become apparent soon. Harvey, did you have a report from Half Moon Bay, or are you here just for the amusement?
Yeah, I do have three brief announcements. On May 20th, that's next Saturday, from 1 to 3, there's going to be a large public meeting about farm worker issues, where we will have lots of people who can actually make decisions for the state and the county. It'll be from 1 to 3 p.m. at the Boys and Girls Club or the community center, whatever you want to call it, on Kelly Avenue. So that should be a very useful way to find out what's actually going to be happening with our farm worker community. The second announcement has to do with SAM. I'm an alternate director of SAM, and on our last meeting, we did not pass the budget. We hope to do it soon. The main contention of why we're not passing what has been proposed by management has to do with a feasibility study for the Montero force main repair. We're waiting for the results of that study before we fund the repair, and that should be done imminently. We're supposed to do it by July 1st. The third and probably most important announcement has to do with the release of the first public draft of the Half Moon Bay housing element. We had a large meeting yesterday, a public meeting where many people spoke. The draft of that housing element is on the city's website. It's very long, it's very detailed. It lists lots of alternative sites for affordable housing, plans for how we can meet our RHNA requirement. That's the Regional Housing Needs Assessment. And the announcement period, or the period for public comment ends May 16th. If you have public comment, then we hope to get the draft to HCD, the Housing Community Development, I think, by the end of May. Then it gets turned around. The HCD makes comments, and we have to resubmit it probably by the end of the year. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Question from Council, Claire. Unmute, please.
I didn't though. Okay. Harvey, two questions quickly, please. First, I missed the date of the farm worker meeting. What date was that?
May 20th, Saturday,
Next Friday at 3?
1 to 3.
1 to 3.
Yeah.
Okay. Second question is regarding the sewers. I was under the impression that FEMA had agreed to pay for a good chunk of the costs of the repair. I don't know if that's true or not. If it is true, perhaps you know. If in either case, what additional information are you looking for in order to decide whether you're going to pay for it?
That's the first I heard about FEMA paying for it. You may know more than I do. As far as I know, Sam is going to have to pay for it. And your question was,
what additional information are you trying to develop between now and July 1st in order to decide whether to pay for it?
Okay. No, we're going to pay for it, but we need to know what we're paying for. And we need to know things like the alignment of the new pipe, the material of the pipe. Those are the principal things that could really affect the cost of replacing it. And until we have some idea in hand of what the actual project is, Half Moon Bay's position is that we need to understand the cost of that replacement. We're not.
I'm going to interject here.
Yeah, go ahead.
I will have an update on Sam later in the meeting, and there's more to this story that's being discussed. We don't have time under government reports to go into all the details right now. Sid, did you have a question?
Do I have time for a follow-up question or not?
Well, I'm already running late. I've got a deadline to get this cert thing on the table before 8 o'clock. Sid, Ann, did you have a question? Unmute, Ann.
I know. Sorry about that. I apologize. No, I just wanted to see if Harvey can update us on the $1 million grant that the county gave for the farm worker housing.
That's the update as far as I know. And the county is trying to get a $5 million grant from the Joe Cerna money, and that looks very promising that we'll be able to get that. And there have been 2 meetings now about the proposal for building mobile homes for farm workers on the 880 Stone Pine site.
That's great.
It is.
Sid, you have a question?
Yes, Harvey. Basically, on the $1 million, if you guys don't end up building that 880 Stone Pine mobile home property, will you be keeping the $1 million, or is it only for to help you get the Joe Cerna grant?
I'm confident that we will end up building that project. So.
Oh, good. And the other question is for the farm worker thing that's on Saturday the 20th. At the Boys and Girls Club. Do you know who's attending? Will Mid-Penn Housing be there?
I don't know. I know that there's going to be lots of state and county officials, including Ray Mueller.
Because, I mean, it seems like some of the farm workers could be in Moonridge, except for the fact that now other people that are not farm workers are living there. Is that true? Have you guys asked Mid-Penn to do any kind of a survey of that?
Informally, I've heard that there are a lot of people living there who are not farm workers, but I don't think there's been an official survey.
And so I think it would be helpful if you guys invited Mid-Penn to that meeting. Thanks.
Sure.
Ann, you have a question for Harvey?
Yeah, question, Harvey. Thank you for your report. I guess my question is, going to have mobile homes for farm workers at Stone Pine. When they used to have mobile homes on the farm property in the past, is that no longer allowed to have maybe upgraded mobile homes at the farm property? Do you know?
Now, if the farm worker housing conforms to the requirements,
Allowed.
they can still be built there.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'd like to now move, Crystal, and I see you're here. Do you have any report or are you just attending?
I think I'm just attending. Only shout outs for future stuff is the inaugural Pride Parade will be on Sunday, June 11th, and there will be a forum if any groups want to be in the parade. And the day before that, on June 10th, downtown Half Moon Bay will have a kind of disaster emergency day similar to what the county does. We did one a couple years ago. And so if there's any organizations that want to be a part of that, please contact Joe Butcher at the city.
All right. There is one other semi-official here. Scott Pine, you're here from CERT, and I know you have a deadline of 8 o'clock. So I'm going to invite you, if you want to make a comment on the item that's in the consent agenda, requesting that the MCC purchase emergency telecommunications gear. Did you want to say anything about that?
Sure, Greg, I'll be glad to make some quick comments on that front. Thank you, by the way, for the opportunity to speak to the council. For those of you who don't know me, I'm here both as a resident of the Midcoast itself, particularly the East Miramar neighborhood, but also on behalf of Coastside CERT, where I'm currently the so-called radio officer. Both personally and on behalf of CERT, I'd like to endorse the plan that would have the council members equipped with GMRS radios for emergency communications purposes. That would allow them to participate in the multi-level radio communications plan that Coastside CERT already has in place for use in disasters and emergencies, and which was activated and effectively used back in January. More generally, Coastside CERT encourages all Coastside residents to be equipped with their own GMRS or FRS walkie-talkies and to be conversant with the communication plan that might be in effect in their neighborhood, because until and unless Greg and his team successfully improve the resilience of the official Coastside internet and cellular infrastructure, as we found out back in January, when everything hits the fan, the multi-level radio network plan that we've set up for CERT is sometimes the only way that people can communicate with operations centers and with professional first responders. So we endorse the plan, like I said, both myself personally and on behalf of Coastside CERT, and I would be happy to arrange training for the MCC members at our mutual convenience whenever needed on that gear if you choose to go ahead with acquiring it. And I can take quick questions myself before I return the floor to Greg.
Do you have any questions for CERT or Scott here? Anybody?
This is a bit out of the ordinary because this was a consent agenda item.
Yeah,
I know there's time restraints. I understand that. So I think we should table this and have further discussion.
Of course we will.
And more in-depth discussion at the next meeting.
All right, well, that'll come up when we vote on consent agenda. Sure, I hear your point. All right, Claire, did you have a question? I see Claire's hand is up. Did you have a question for Scott?
Yes, I have a question for Scott. Are you involved in this thing on June 10th in Half Moon Bay, the emergency fair or whatever it is?
Yes, Coastside CERT is working closely with Joe, and we will be heavily, to say the least, represented at that occasion.
In the past, pre-pandemic, the MCC was invited to participate in that, and this year, despite my efforts to contact Joe Butcher, we have not been invited. Can you perhaps offline maybe help us with this if we decide we want to go at this point?
I'm not sure that I have any real influence there, Claire, but I will be glad to try and put you in touch. Maybe Joe will respond to an email from our program manager where they weren't responding to you. I don't know that I have any ability to make anything happen, but I'll be glad to try and facilitate comms.
Thank you very much.
I think I can do that, Claire.
And I think Harvey would probably be much more effective at it than I would.
At this point, I don't know. It may be too late for us to get our act together to do it, but I've been trying for like 2 months to reach him. So any help would be appreciated.
Well, I'll put in a good word.
Thank you.
Thanks, Harvey. All right, Sid, are you commenting on public comment, or do you have something to ask about?
I'm commenting since Catherine's not here from MWSD. It's a quick one. I just want to mention that we're having an anniversary celebration, 20 years of water and 35 years for sewer, and it's a save the date for September 9th, which is a Saturday before the Fog Fest. Thank you.
I think that's all the government officials. If I missed anyone, speak up now. All right, failing hearing any more public comment. Seeing none, I believe it is time to move to the consent agenda, which has three things: minutes from April 26th, authorizing the purchase of emergency telecommunications equipment, and approving a letter to Ocean Colony. I think I should just take a second to go over two of these things before we hear from you guys. The letter to Ocean Colony I'm writing is part of our research on the stormwater work group. I've been in touch with the president of the Ocean Colony Association.
Tell you what, I'm gonna pull that item so we can discuss it later. It says right on the consent agenda, right on our agenda.
So you want to pull?
No discussion. Authorized purchase of emergency telecommunications equipment and B and C.
Okay, so you're going to have us discuss those later in the meeting. All right.
And I'm gonna pull the minutes.
All right, and we also have somebody pulling the minutes. So we have no consent agenda left, and we will have to come back to this during the regular agenda. Okay. Moving on then, we did have a little bit of a fire drill earlier this week. And Dave Barnett of the Department of Emergency Management, I believe you are here to fill us in on what's been going on there. Are you still with us, David? And do you need me to let you share screen, or are you just going to speak?
I am here. My name is David Barnett. I am working with the Department of Emergency Management as the project lead for what we are calling the North Peak Emergency Access Road Repair. Looks like I am able to share screen, but I wanted to be cognizant of time and would you like me to incorporate this briefing in
You have a couple slides you want to show. We have time for that now.
Okay. I'm actually going to turn off my video just because I seem to have an unstable connection. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to share a screen. Okay. So what you're looking at is actually an aerial view of the peak. This peak at Montara Mountain provides critical communication to approximately 70,000 coastside residents that extend all the way up to actually the Marin Headlands down to well past Half Moon Bay. The users of this peak for critical communications: public safety, local, regional, state, national parks, CHP, CAL FIRE, all police departments. This tsunami warning, emergency crew workers for PG&E. This is a very unique site, and Montara Mountain on the right is actually an SFPUC land, and the road accessing it from the west, Highway 1, crosses 3 different land ownerships. Let me share a different screen. The primary landowners of the road is state parks, as well as the water district, which leased for 99 years to county parks. It briefly goes through American Tower Corporation's parcel with actually housing the towers for cell service, and then crosses over to SFPUC land. This road during the storms this year has significantly eroded. It is not accessible by a Type 3 fire engine. It is not accessible by the typical service vehicles. The only way to access it when the road is dry is by an emergency all-terrain vehicle. Because we cannot access it from the west side, and the east side SFPUC road is now closed due to its own road repairs, we are unable to, Information Service District is unable to fill the propane tanks, the two 400-gallon propane tanks at the site which fuel the generator. So currently, the generator system is dependent on diesel, and there are 2 to 3 days of diesel for when the power is out. Getting up this road from Highway 1 with emergency service vehicles like all-terrain vehicles to carry literally 30 to 40 gallons of diesel up is unsafe at this point due to these past rains. Information Services Department made the trip several times. There were multiple times that the site was at risk a few hours away from losing service as power was out to the site and backup generators were needed. And when propane was out, it was dependent on the backup to the backup generators. So as a result, I was tasked by DEM to tackle this, bring the landowners together. We have formed a unified command of between state parks, county parks, and GGNRA. We have a contract with ATC that allows us to do work on ATC's parcel as a county. And while ATC is responsible for maintaining the road, their limit of liability per the contract is $1,000 a year. The storm damage was much greater than that. Therefore, we've implemented a plan to do emergency road repairs, which entails masticating a vegetation that is overgrown, bringing down some trees that are in the interfere with the Type 3 vehicle or present a hazard to Type 3 fire engines accessing the peak. We will also, after mastication, be working on, let me show you again some other pictures of the actual road conditions. The amount of road damage that has occurred, the rutting, has just gotten worse and worse, and to the point where no utility vehicle can make the peak, even if the road is dry. If you didn't know, this slide actually shows you where in 1999 an Nextel service
You don't see your screen.
Can you hear me?
We hear you, but we don't see the screen. You mentioned you were going to show us some
Oh, I'm
pictures.
sorry. I'm sorry. Let me return.
You must have turned screen sharing off.
Yeah, okay. Can you see the picture?
Coming back.
Yeah. Okay, so this slide actually shows the location where the Nextel service delivery went off the road in 1999, the fatality during a rainstorm. There were times that Information Services District Department personnel were in 60 to 90 mile an hour winds at the tower in driving rain, trying to ensure that the coast had communications. Due to the safety to emergency service personnel, as well as the service personnel for the tower, the landowners came together, and we're going to be doing mastication in necessary areas. We're going to be doing some erosion control, so where berms on the side are brought in so that the water doesn't run straight down the hill but goes off to the side. We are not doing an improvement of the road. We are not doing a final repair of the road. We are only doing it so that a Type 3 fire engines can access the peak and emergency service vehicles can access the peak for servicing of the radio tower. The scope of work, like I said, involves slowing the water down so it doesn't continue to erode the road, providing safety so that way dips and divots don't result in overturns of emergency vehicles, which have nearly happened multiple times to the ATVs going up. So we had planned on starting the work yesterday, but the rains made it completely unsafe. And if the heavy equipment had been put on the road, it would have damaged the road to an extent more than we could repair. So we needed to dry out. Currently, at this time, there isn't a vehicle that can travel this road safely as of yesterday. As the road dries out, the ATV vehicles could go up the road and provide fuel to the backup generators if needed. Our current plan is to close the park on the 30th. We haven't finalized this plan. We need to look at the road conditions. We have been told by state parks that we cannot close the park during Memorial Day weekend. So we're looking to start the project again on May 30th, which will likely be 8 days to 9 days of weekdays, finishing 2 weeks after the May 30th start date, and then opening the park on the second Saturday after the 30th. So that's the report. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer.
I just want you to clarify. So our telecommunications are at risk if the power goes out because we don't have enough backup fuel capacity and we can't get enough backup fuel there. Tell them what you told me your boss told you about the fire, not treat it as a fire.
Yeah, so basically we've created an incident management team, and the National Incident Management System is set up for this after 9/11 for interoperability to implement a plan where there is public safety. There is the National Incident Management System to create a structure of organization, of objectives, organization, and a plan to implement those objectives and bring those different agencies together under a common terminology. That is the National Incident Management System. If the hill was on fire, there wouldn't be approval processes, there wouldn't be CEQA, is already agreement in place between interagency fire agencies to come together and operate to put out the fire. We had to create that interagency agreement between the three landowners under the National Incident Management System, create a plan, which I shared with you, with Greg, to share with all, so that way we could operate safely under clear objectives, common communications, and be logistically supported. That is what the National Incident Management System is for. And it doesn't necessarily just apply to when there's a fire. The National Incident Management System was used when Oroville Dam was overflowing and at risk of failure. It was done in the chicken flu in the Central Valley. It's actually being used in the Tulare Lake flooding right now. So again, it's a very effective system. We have a plan in place. The landowners have approved it. We just need to restart it because we had to postpone.
Okay, so if you would stop sharing your screen, I'd like to ask for questions from the council. Do we have any questions from the council? Kimberly?
I have a couple of questions, Mr. Barnett. You showed a picture from 1999. Do you have recent pictures of today?
No, those pictures were from today. That was that was the location in 1999 where the Nextel service person went off.
Okay. I have serious concerns about this because I don't remember this coming before the community. And I would like the community to be aware of it. There are a lot of people who frequent that park, frequent those roads, including myself, for the last 20 years. I'm up there at least once or twice a week. I don't think this area has been treated very gently with the work done in the last couple of years on the towers for the city of San Francisco. So I guess I'd like to have more information and have the community be able to provide some input to the three landowners that you say produced a plan. And forgive me if I missed this, Greg, but I didn't see a plan posted for this.
We didn't post a plan. We did email the council members material that Mr. Barnett sent us. And at that time, we were under the impression they were gonna start the work on, I think, May 8th. So the question before the council was, did we need to call an emergency meeting to discuss this before they started the work? And the decision of the council members was there was no need for an emergency meeting because of the safety issues involved. Now, that doesn't mean we won't have comment or won't request a review or want to audit afterwards and suggest mitigations or any of those other things. So I think the questions for Mr. Barnett are, appropriate. But Dave, did you have more than what you sent me to share?
No, that is pretty much the summary, the plan, but to address the, we are not doing a full repair. American Tower has a permit that is going to the Coastal Commission board this for undergrounding, and they have apparently $1.5 million dedicated to the repair of that road when they're undergrounding. Department of Emergency Management, in consultation with legal, as well as county executive staff, have determined and input from fire, input from ISD, input from the landowners. This is a public safety issue. We cannot service the site dependably right now or provide fuel. That is why this repair is being done on an emergency basis. We are going to be doing environmental nesting bird surveys 3 days prior. We have identified critical manzanita. There are resource advisors that are going to be on site from state parks, from county parks, and GGNRA to guide where hand crew work is needed instead of mastication. But all we are trying to do is literally access the peak with emergency vehicles safely, as well as the service vehicles necessary to maintain the communications on the coast.
I'd just like to follow up with one item. What I noticed, especially recently, as more and more work's being done on the peak, the work is actually precipitating the damage from the runoff from the water. So I guess I haven't seen the plan. I'd like to look at that. I hope there's a section in the plan that addresses that issue and that you would look at that more closely to make sure that you're not causing more damage to the road.
We have the state forester from CAL FIRE who identified that a lot of previous work on that road just caused the water to run down the hill. That is why we are going to be eliminating a lot of the berm areas that are preventing the water from running off the side. That has been the reason why we're not going up now with the water on the road being damaged by the heavy equipment. Again, we have had input from all the landowners as well as resource advisors on how best to accomplish the objective safely, knowing also that American Tower is coming in with a full road repair. So we recognize the concerns. This was brought to the attention by all the agencies trying to reach the top of these unsafe conditions, and that's why it's being addressed in this emergency management scenario where we are notifying the public. We actually have notified the public through multiple avenues, state parks, county parks, next door, of the closures that were planned for this week, as well as the cancellation of it. And we will do the same thing when we're implementing the emergency road repairs, as well as all the safety measures to ensure that anybody that happens to be in the park, despite the closures, is safe and kept away from the heavy equipment. There's been an immense planning process, as there is when there is a fire, if the mountain was on fire, and the community public input. We are happy to receive input, but at this point, the plan is moving forward due to the threat to public safety, as well as the threat to service workers that have to access the peak.
Claire, did you have a question?
I just wanted to help perhaps clarify some of this. I understand that what you're doing right now is an emergency, and that's fine. The MCC did produce a letter in early 2022 regarding the ultimate repair of the road, and there were a number of points made in that I think we'll probably want to readdress as the focus of your project changes to more repair and maintenance and upgrade. But that's separate from what you're doing now. I just don't want you to forget that we do have a position paper on it.
Yes, and about the long term, if you didn't know, there are no easement agreements with state parks, county parks, or the water district, or GGNRA with ATC for maintenance of the road. The only times that the road had ever been maintained is when there has been a permit for work. There is not a requirement for ongoing maintenance by contract. As a result, there hasn't been propane brought up from the west side for almost 20 years. They've been come up through SFPUC land, which is not the contract, and now that road is closed. So the road has continued to deteriorate, and all the landowners are now unified, and they are working on the long-term maintenance agreement, so that way you do not see the rutting, you have appropriate drainage, and long-term effects of any maintenance are considered.
Okay, Sid, you have a question?
Yes, I do. I'm curious, Dave, it doesn't say here what agency you're with.
I'm with the San Mateo County Department of Emergency Management.
Okay. And then the other thing is who are the landowners?
There are, from Highway 1 all the way up to the communication tower, there are 5. There are California State Parks, comprises the majority of it, including the land that was given over to them from Caltrans in 2016, Old San Pedro Mountain Road. Then Water District land on the north aspect of the peak. There are 2 small parcels, and then there's
when you say Water District, are you referring to SFPUC or MWSD?
The North County Coastal Water.
Oh, and okay.
And they have leased those 2 parcels for 99 years to county parks for $1. Okay. So county parks has been authorized to do maintenance on that road, and they have a road maintenance plan that covers those 2 parcels for that small section. Then there is the American Tower Corporation at the peak. There's about 1/4 mile total of GGNRA national parks on the south side of the peak. And then at the very end, there is SFPUC land, which actually doesn't have any road repair needs at this time.
Okay. I just was asking that because of redundancy. I am a director of the MWSD, Montero Water and Sanitary District. About halfway up the mountain, we have the Alta Vista well. It already has a generator. It has a decent road to get up there. And I believe that's the location they're going to be installing an AT&T cell phone tower. So if, I know it's expensive and you're already going to be working on this road, but if in the instance of needing redundancy, you might consider putting an alternative thing on the Alta Vista location.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're limited that we are unable, because of CEQA exemptions and the California Coastal Commission exemptions that have been granted, we can participate. None of this work can apply to anything new.
I'm talking for future. Yeah.
Oh, I know that.
Okay,
but
thanks.
We are just dealing with the emergency road repair on this road repair now. Once we are finished this road repair, it transitions to the normal planning processes and permits that ATC have filed or the landowners have in place.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
I just have one quick question. It's just a little off here. In an emergency, this is like you're going to run out of fuel, etc. Why don't you just go up El Granada Boulevard, open the gate, go all the way to the tippy top and make a left on the PUC Fire Road? You won't have to go up any hills. It's practically paved, and zip right over to that tower.
SFPUC has closed all the roads to us.
Okay. Well, in an emergency, it's just gates that they would need to open, right?
No, I know that, but it comes to service of the vehicles and the road repair.
Okay.
SFPC's denied access.
Right, they denied access. In an emergency, maybe they shouldn't do that.
No, and there are conversations in terms of the contract. The San Mateo County has a lease with both ATC and SFPUC, and the contract to service the peaks directly, very clearly says we will use the West Side ATC road. So that is being revisited. But right now, the contracts are in place. SFPUC has had road failures themselves, and therefore we cannot use it for servicing. In an emergency, the fire may get up there, the fire vehicle access may be able to get up there, but that would then delay significantly delay any emergency medical services or any fires at the hill that they would have if they don't have access from the west side.
Okay.
Dave, thanks for coming and taking the time. I suspect there may be follow-up issues and questions, and we'll address them to you, and you can point us to who the right people are going forward.
Okay, and I do want to offer as the manager of this plan, if you have any concerns or you want me to relay something to the landowners, I will happy to relay. I can't promise that this plan is stopping, but there is no reason why we couldn't try to implement. This is the reason we're here making this briefing. We had time, we could do it. And so if we need to make an adjustment to the plan, like we have with the Manzanita or the nesting bird surveys, we will. We want to make sure that we do engage the community, but it's going to be an engagement, not in an approval process, but how can we make the plan better and serve the community so that the outcome meets all the objectives and doesn't have unintended consequences. So I would ask, just communicate to Greg, and I'd be happy to stay in touch with Greg with any concerns or suggestions on improvement of the plan to take it under consideration.
Okay, thank you, Dave.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and I did distribute the documents he sent me, so please.
I saw it. It was very complete. The details of what they're going to do is complete. It's pretty good. You know exactly what they're doing.
Thorough job. Thank you, Dave. It is now time to go to a major agenda item: Midcoast shoreline erosion and armoring. Lisa Ketchum and Claire Toutons, and I don't know, others may have contributed to this. Lisa, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's try sharing your screen and see what happens.
How'd that work?
It worked.
Okay, one thing, my setup here is blocking part of the text, so I had to fix that. Where it shows the people on the side. How do I get that to go away?
I think for the people on the side,
I think there's a bar halfway up.
at the top of the panel that shows the faces of everybody, there should be a minimize button. It looks like.
Good. I got it. Okay, sorry. Okay, so Midcoast shoreline erosion and armoring. Now, this is very specific. I mean, I know the shoreline, a lot of issues there, but we're trying to focus on that. And this is similar to a presentation I provided for the Planning Commission 2 weeks ago. And the focus there was a bit different because the Planning Commission is involved in approving developments and stuff like that and trying to get long-term planning efforts moving forward. And the other 4 commissioners live on the Bayside. So that was what I did. And so I'm going to, good, okay. So I'm going to move kind of quickly because this is long, and just to say that there's links in here, lots of ways you can go back over this. And so let's start with the California Coastal Act, which became effective on February 1st, 1977. And the 2 policies or goals or whatever in the Coastal Act that pertain to our subject today are these 2. And basically keep these 2 in mind as you go through the slides and look at, what's happened and see how we're doing. So the first is to protect natural shorelines, limit the use of shoreline armoring. And the second is to minimize risk from coastal hazards when approving new development. So those are the 2 to keep in mind. Other related to the Coastal Act here, the public trust doctrine, this goes all the way back to, I don't know whether Pilgrims or something. Anyway, in California, the state owns the beach seaward of the mean high tide line. And this, of course, may fluctuate as sand moves around. It's not exact. It's also going to be affected by sea level rise. But the state holds the beach in trust for the public. Now, the impacts of shoreline armoring are degradation of natural shoreline scenic resources, which is much greater impact to the general public on the beach than to the private property owner above. There's placement loss, which is the portion of beach covered by the new armoring, which would be greatest for riprap because the rocks have to be at a slope that's stable, 1.5 to 1 or 2 to 1 for stability. So in other words, if your bluff is 20 feet high and you want to arm it with riprap, it's going to extend 40 feet out onto the beach for the length of the wall. Another effect is reduced beach access, lateral, which is along the beach, or vertical, which is to and from the beach. That could be a problem with the armoring, and also reduced sand supply because the natural process of eroding cliffs contributes to that. Now we have passive erosion, which is what they call when an artificial headland forms with the loss of beach in front of the revetment as the adjacent natural shorelines migrate inland over the long term. And then there's active erosion, which is accelerated erosion is due to wave interaction with the armoring structures. The key piece we're all aware of here is the south of the harbor jetty along Surfers Beach. Now let's start, we'll go from north to south. So Montero State Beach, beautiful, preserved shoreline to mountaintop, reserved natural land, and there's the rocks in the middle of the view. So the aesthetics of the armoring, in the lower right picture, you have the natural cliff face at Montero State Beach and the mountain behind, and compared to the picture on the left of the imported boulders and concrete slurry that contrast harshly with the surrounding natural landscape. So in 1983 El Nino storms at Montero Beach, only 4 years after construction, emergency armoring was installed on the public beach to protect the Chart House restaurant. Early permitting for this redevelopment in the Coastal Development Permit, the Coastal Commission was in charge in 1977 when this was approved, and it was a redevelopment of a 50s motel restaurant which had been there. The Coastal Commission had the CDP jurisdiction from when the 1977 Coastal Act effective date until 1980 when the county approved their local coastal program, and then the county could take over that review of coastal development permits. So the top image shows you in 1979 the newly constructed Chart House restaurant right there at the edge of the bluff, and then more or less as it looks today with the riprap on 460 linear feet of ocean bluff. So maintenance and useful life. The steep wall of boulders is 40 years old, undermined, and hazardous. There was a 2010 report by BAG engineers said that the riprap was not keyed into the firm ground underlying the sand. The bottom 6 feet of riprap has been grouted with cement without permit. Parking lot drains discharge behind the riprap, causing undermining, and the report recommends rerouting the drainage and pipes and repairing the riprap seawall, which has not been done. This cave here that you see on the picture on the left, I took my tape measure up down there one day, and it went 7 feet in under that pile of rocks, and you can see the large boulders above, and this is all just being held up by the smaller rocks and this concrete slurry that was sprayed on there. The red line at the property boundary indicates all the riprap is on state parks land. The 2017 County Use Permit Amendment to legalize unpermitted development at the restaurant includes a condition of approval to repair the riprap, to coordinate the plan with state parks and the Coastal Commission, and submit the plan within 1 year. The plan for the county mandated riprap repairs was due in October 2018. The riprap repair should include removal of view blocking boulders on the bluff top. This comes from an MCC letter, September 2017. The riprap extends onto the top of the bluff far beyond where needed for erosion protection, blocking public access and views. Planned cross sections of the riprap are conceptual, showing an even, gentle slope, but in reality the slope is much steeper along the bottom and more level along the top. The red line marks the upper reach of riprap in front of the restaurant and the Dirt State Parks lot, which have no view obstruction. Was my rationale for removing the extra rocks. So anyway, nothing's more happened, but this is what's in place. This is what was asked for, and I wanted you to be informed. One more picture here. So this is just the view from the parking lot. The excess boulders, you can't even see the beach. So moving on, now this is Reef Point Road in Moss Beach, and this is all pre-Coastal Act 60s era development, and the armoring was all there, and so it's grandfathered without the coastal development permit. But modification or repair does require a CDP, which has happened. This area has required extensive repairs over the years under county permit. Then this comment here: reaction to the natural process of coastal bluff erosion has been piecemeal emergency armoring to protect development, mostly without regard to aesthetics, coastal access, or long-term shoreline dynamics. Now I'm going to focus on this section of the Marine Reserve. This is at the beach access ramp there, and between Sunshine Valley, which is Dean Creek, and then on the right where San Vicente Creek comes out. Well, in the 1975 picture it was still in a culvert, but anyway. So prior to 1983, the public beach access existed both north and south of the ramp, as you can see. The county 1980s armoring permit approvals noted the wide beach and that lateral access would not be blocked by riprap placed on the public beach to protect 3 houses. The bottom shows where the 3 houses are that have the armoring, and then I also noted here on the left, 199 Arbor Lane, hadn't been built yet, but houses approved there in 2018 with a condition of approval, no future armoring allowed. Same thing in the middle there, anyway, no future armoring. This is an example of managed retreat. So threatened by bluff erosion in 2002, instead of armoring the cliff, the historic house at 100 Beach Street was moved inland onto the neighboring parcel at 263 Nevada. In 2012, on appeal of a coastal development permit for expansion of the relocated house, the Coastal Commission prohibited future armoring. This slide was created by local geologists, USGS, and a report to the county about the condition of the riprap, falling rock hazard, other boulders that points down to the next set of, down the beach there with the other pile of rocks, and the riprap strewn on the beach due to wave erosion. Coastal armoring is a government-sanctioned taking from the public. Ed Lorenz wrote this in a comment to the Planning Commission. I just had to repeat that. Even at low tide, public access along the shoreline is difficult and hazardous due to deteriorating riprap with precariously perched boulders overhead and strewn over the beach. The new sign was added in response to the geologist's 2013 report of rockfall hazard. I went down the other day just to take some new pictures of this section. The peninsulas of rock expand across the beach. Sorry, I got the thing blocking my view. Well, you guys can read it. As the riprap deteriorates and the surrounding cliffs erode naturally, nourishing the beach. And then you turn in the other direction to the north, and that's what you see there. That house, well, anyway, I'll let the picture speak for itself. Even at low tide, shoreline access is severely hindered by armoring rocks spread uselessly far across the beach blocking access to and from Sunshine Valley, which is also part of the Marine Reserve. The CDP exemption approved by staff. Oh, no, wait a minute. This is the CDP exemption that was approved in just this last month for a major remodel of the house, just that this armoring was put to protect. They get the exemption because of the existing regulations about redevelopment or whatever it is. And so no public hearing, nothing. They just approved it, major remodel, no discussion of the deteriorating riprap or opportunity for managed retreat on the large lot, as several more feet slumped of these rocks in their backyard slumped downhill during this winter storms. This was a sandy beach, just saying. So the I'm sorry. There's this talking gizmo right over the text. So this is the beach, whatever it says there, Moss Beach ramp or promontory or something like that. It's constructed of rock and concrete rubble on the shoreline of San Vicente Creek before the Marine Reserve was established in 1969. So pre-Coastal Act, pre-county parks, everything. And it really took a hit, particularly in this past winter. But the 2016 FMR Master Plan Assessment calls for managed retreat as the overlook degrades. So just to wrap up this section, this is more or less today on Google. The cliff erosion is cutting in behind the riprap. Red hours at 97 Beach and 201 Nevada show where those houses on large lots could be moved away from the eroding shoreline. County permit conditions of approval to maintain the riprap have, since the 80s, they have never been enforced. So a little further south, at just there by the Seal Cove Beach access stairs, the house at 96 Terrace was destroyed by fire in 2018. The new owners plan to rebuild in the same location with a CDP exemption, once again, because it's redevelopment. The arrow in the bottom picture points to, you can tell this is a chimney there, the seaward extent and level of the house footprint, which is where they would have to put it. And then in the foreground, the status of the armoring boulder seen here on the beach is being investigated. It appears it was, well, I don't go into detail, but I'm attending a meeting tomorrow morning, a virtual meeting with county planner and the code compliance person from the Coastal Commission. So we'll see what that might bring. Okay, so now this is the Seal Cove neighborhood, which of course looks much different now. But in 1979, all the four houses seen here west of Ocean Boulevard now have been relocated or demolished. Ocean Boulevard between the distillery and San Lucas Avenue was permanently closed by 2011 due to ongoing deep landslide. To the north and south of this neighborhood, the cliffs at the Marine Reserve County Park, which extends south to Pillar Point, can erode naturally with gradual retreat of any trails and fencing. This bluff we're looking at here is 100 feet high, so it's just not likely to be armored. So now I just wanted to discuss deed restricted conditions of approval prohibiting future armoring, which are added to coastal development permits for new development. And I know the council reviewed a project a couple months back, and obviously why would you have a need to know about this sort of thing? So I wanted to speak about it. Basically, on the right here, initially this started with the Coastal Commission imposing these conditions of approval when the project was sent to them on appeal. And it first happened in Princeton, on Vassar, and then the house on Nevada that I spoke to that was relocated, and then some more. It first happened by the county applying it right from the get-go on the initial CDP was the Ballamar Bluff, 4 houses in 2019, and then 2 on Ocean Boulevard that I'll show you in a minute. But basically, these conditions are just saying, the applicant takes the risk, waive responsibility, and a deed restricted, no future armoring, and the now or in the future that the applicant has to remove or relocate the development when it's unsafe, and remove anything that falls on the beach, and full disclosure to potential buyers, all of that. And then some other conditions were added when the Arbor Lane house was appealed to the Coastal Commission, that they prohibited deep piers and tieback foundation, which itself constitutes a form of armoring, and also applied prohibitions to the adjacent steep banks of creeks and ravines that are taller than 10 feet high, which also fall under the definition of a coastal bluff. So the couple more additional conditions of approval that you may be familiar with, depending on how long you've been on the council. Ballamar Bluff, conditions were added to preserve public coastal access on the trail on the bluff and sensitive habitat. This was, of course, we had an applicant who was willing to listen to reason, and then Ocean Boulevard, the yellow line around that lot, mid-block on Ocean Boulevard, where the house was approved, but with another condition that the county is not required to maintain access or utility infrastructure when coastal hazards eliminate access to the site due to degradation and eventual failure of Ocean Boulevard as a viable roadway. I wasn't sure how that was going to go, because obviously on Marata Road, there has been a different approach. And of course, that's a much lower bluff in Miramar, and also the armoring had begun pre-Coastal Act, and this was new development. So anyway, but that's there now. So moving to Princeton, this is going to be short because, this is a part of a whole other Plan Princeton thing, and I want to get into deep. So this is just the westernmost block here. There's a links throughout here take you to pages on the MCC website or elsewhere to study more information on it. But basically, the upper picture, 1972, you can see that early development was set well back from the shoreline, and the lower picture shows what it looks like today. So the shoreline there, where the pier used to be, this is the same block that you see there on the right. In 1997, on one day, the county zoning hearing officer approved 7 marine warehouses, quote unquote, with caretaker units on Ocean Boulevard, which is a paper street on the beach, substandard 25-foot wide lots, all previously under the same ownership, now luxury waterfront homes, which is not a coastal dependent use, and emergency armoring was added before construction of the last building was even complete. So once again, thinking back to the Coastal Act, and that, you shouldn't be putting development where there's a coastal hazard. So how are we doing with that decision? Then this arrow on the bottom here, an 8th building in 1999, 8th building in this waterfront row was approved, and that was appealed to the Coastal Commission, and where they added the deed restricted prohibition of future armoring, which was the first for the Midcoast. So same block here, the lateral beach access at the foot of Romeo Pier, blocked in 2009 by illegally placed riprap, trucked down the street from 380 Princeton Avenue boulder stockpiles stored there since the Coastal Commission riprap enforcement action in 2008. Nobody said a thing, nothing's been done. Okay, so shifting gears, I pulled these together because the question with the planning department and trying to get updating the county's policies on permitting where there's coastal hazards and all, I just have been unable to get this on their long-range planning queue, and I was trying to demonstrate all the research that has been done. Anyway, so we've got the 2015 Coastal Regional Sediment Management Plan. Once again, the link at the top you go to that page, you can find most of this stuff. The key one here is the Coastal Commission guidance on, by the way, can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Oh, cool. That link has, I don't think the public trust is there, but it has the three sea level rise policy guidance. These are the guidance that they offer to cities and counties when they're updating their LCP to address sea level rise. And then the latest one that they're just about to approve this month is the Public Trust Guiding Principles and Action Plan. And you remember I told you about public trust. Up to the mean high tide is the public, and so that's kind of in a partnership with the Coastal Commission goals and all that. And then I wanted to point you to the 2020 Half Moon Bay LCP Land Use Plan update. They have indeed updated their policies, and there's a link. It's chapter 7, and I had this in the Planning Commission thing because I urged them to compare Half Moon Bay chapter 7 shoreline hazard policies with the county LCP policies in chapter 9 hazard components, which have not been updated and that are not even in the long range planning queue. And that Half Moon Bay is a particularly appropriate source for shoreline hazard policies due to the proximity and overlap with unincorporated Midcoast, where Half Moon Bay city limit Cherry Stem extends along Marada Road and Surfers Beach. I did, Director Monowitz did stand firm in wanting to wait on updating the county policies, but he did say he would look over the Half Moon Bay chapter. And then this is the plans, long range plan that the county has done. We have Plan Princeton, which is currently stalled, but hopefully we'll see soon. There was a 2016 adaptation design charrette for Marada Road, 2018 San Mateo County sea level rise vulnerability assessment, and with vulnerability profiles for FMR, Marada Road, Surfers Beach, Half Moon Bay landfill, Sam sewer plant. Once again, you can find those profiles on that at that link at the top of this page. Then there was a just recently approved 2021 local hazard mitigation plan. This is a countywide thing, and these are just some quotes. Mitigating the impacts from sea level rise will take resources and tough land use decisions starting immediately. Counties should consider adoption of higher regulatory standards to mitigate impacts of sea level rise on redevelopment. This is what I've been trying to get at, and it's already, the plan is done. And yet, Director Monowitz says we must wait until the countywide safety element update is complete, which likely will not be before 2025. The key issue, as you know, as the planning commissioner in approving new development, the Coastal Commission is recommending a minimum 100-year time frame to assess for coastal hazards for residential development, including the effects of sea level rise. The county is still looking at only a 50-year time frame. The county plans, no, I already said that. So, like I say, I brought this up at the Planning Commission study session, and I didn't get anywhere with that. So, so the Pillar Point Harbor Breakwater and Surfers Beach, I didn't want to go deep into this because it's so complex. You got all these government agencies. We're aware of the issues: erosion, deteriorating riprap, threatened critical infrastructure right there at the highway, sediment in the harbor. Also, thank you, Jim Pruitt. I wanted to point out this at their meeting, the Harbor Commission meeting, May 17, 1 p.m. Oh, I forgot to tell you what One Shoreline is. So if you hadn't heard, that's the short name for San Mateo County Flood and Sea Level Rise Resiliency District. There's the link to the project. That's not just their website, but it's this specific project, Pillar Point Harbor Shoreline Management Study from Pillar Point to Miramar. And finally, I thought we were going to see this last September, but now finally it's going to be presented at the Harbor Commission a week from today. Bob Italio, some of you may know or have heard of him, of ESA. He's the consultant for One Shoreline, and he'll present the results of the review don't miss it. And then just this is just to fill in the background on these things. For Surfers Beach, there's a page for that too. Basically, the U.S. Army Corps, they built and own the outer breakwater. Their report, it's all clearly accepted that the breakwater dramatically increased the rate of erosion south of the jetty. And then their 2016 report determined that their preferred alternative to address the issue is to move a lot of harbor sand over to the beach, but they weren't going to pay for it. And then Caltrans, of course, owns the highway, and the revetment that they've been building and extending since the 90s, the permit is directly with the Coastal Commission, and currently, and the most recent extension of the revetment was in 2016, and that was basically an amendment to their original permit, and it was a 10-year interim but renewable permit, and to allow time to implement a long-term solution. And then the third piece, of course, is the Harbor District, who is working on this sand replenishment that we've heard about. So interesting picture here in upper left. The Marauder Road was the coast highway prior to the 1949 construction of the current alignment. And then the other pictures, you can see how that rapidly eroded and fell into the ocean after the breakwater was built. The county just gave up on it. And then to the Marauder Road section of Miramar, where this image is 2016, where the waves overtop Marauder Road, and we don't seem to have a picture, but in January, some of the restaurant front windows were broken out, so it was definitely bigger. The bottom picture, 1930s Marauder Road in front of Miramar Beach Restaurant. It's the same building in the two pictures, with perpendicular parking west of the road and direct access to the wide, gently sloping beach, in comparison to the narrow road with the rock revetment dropping off and no beach. Though the Marauder Road revetment created this fixed back beach, forming a new headland jutting out over the beach as Marauder surf bluffs naturally retreat. The new armoring rocks along the northern edge of this expanding peninsula have been privately placed, I assume. This is just to protect the house there, where the beach just ends. So this just shows the comparison 1972 to more or less now, where it's obvious that options for managed retreat become increasingly difficult as infill development continues, and it's just been exploding. The oddly, as you can see, the shoreline segment. Everyone who wants to be as close to the approaching sea as possible. Okay, so that's the end of that, and this is obviously this last page. I did not show at the Planning Commission. It sort of reflects the discussion that occurred there and my thoughts about it. This is just my thoughts, but I thought I'd have laid out here for you, and to do with whatever you like. Basically, the item one is what I was pitching about the long-term planning policies that are used for reviewing new development or redevelopment are subject to coastal hazards to reflect the latest science-based guidance from the Coastal Commission that just need to get these updated. I hope you can imagine what it feels like to be on the commission approving development when you're told that these are the policies, these are the regulations it's like that we are using to approve this development. It's like we have blinders on. And number two, when approving new development or redevelopment, in the meantime, use as broad an interpretation of existing policies and regulations as possible for the best ability to protect natural shorelines and locate development away from coastal hazards. This was actually a suggestion, or the wording that Steve put forward. As I said, well, couldn't you look through Half Moon Bay's policies to see if there isn't something? I mean, because this thing about adding the prohibition of future armoring, that's not specifically in our LCP. They just started to do it because the Coastal Commission obviously expects it. Then the third one is to address these rocks all over the beach. So require that existing permitted coastal armoring of private property be maintained such that it does not become a public safety hazard due to rocks or debris falling from above, or increase natural shoreline and public access impacts by expanding beyond its original footprint, such as when the riprap is moved out over the beach by wave action. This was something that Steve seemed to think would be interesting to pursue. He said the county does have this authority. And I think the situation I showed in the image at the Seal Coast staircase we'll see how that goes. And the last one is that a shoreline plan is needed for the FMR segment between Sunshine Valley to San Vicente Creek that we were looking at, because just because of this mix of developed and undeveloped properties, and what's the answer there? It's going to need, it's a tough one. I don't have an answer there, but I don't think it serves anybody to just ignore it year after year after year. So that's the end of my presentation. I'll stop sharing my screen. Let's see.
Okay, questions from the council first, or comments? See, Kimberly.
I just want to say thank you, Lisa. That's a great presentation. I love that you contrasted the photos to show people what happens over time. And one of the things that I noticed that you perhaps didn't point out as much is that there are homeowners who are in between or on either side of homeowners who have armored. And the armoring has caused the land in front of the people who have not armored to erode more quickly. And I'm wondering if you know of any cases in the county where a homeowner who has been impacted by a neighbor who has armored has brought anything forward or pursued any course of action.
I don't know of any course of action proposed. I don't know how they feel about it, but I haven't heard anything.
Well, thanks for a great presentation.
Sure.
Yeah, and let me just say, Lisa, before I move on to the next council, it was a tremendous amount of research, and thank you for educating us. We'll come back to meet later. I see Council Member Gus has his hand raised.
Yeah, thanks. First, Lisa, as always, I don't know what happens when you move on to the next life, because you know more than anybody else ever about everything that's ever happened here. I don't know how we preserve that. So thank you for educating us on this. I guess I have sort of a general question, kind of for anybody here, which is, a couple of weeks ago, the NOAA allocated $562 million for their Climate Ready Coasts initiative. They kicked it to Department of Commerce to actually decide who got the money. It wasn't a competitive process. Commerce just picked projects based on whatever black box process they had. But I have a very dear friend who works in the White House on environmental policy for Joe Biden, and she says they're readying a similarly sized competitive grant pool. So it'll be somewhere in the order of $500 million to $1 billion for climate ready coasts. That they're going to announce shortly. Commerce is probably again going to be the gatekeeper of the money, but it will be competitive. And so my question is it like, who around here in San Mateo County would be the agency, the sort of lead agency in applying for that? Because I just want to make sure that they know that's about to happen. Because the second it gets announced, the East Coast and Gulf Coast are going to jump on that. We're a long way from Washington, D.C. I just want to make sure that to be perfectly frank, San Mateo County has not impressed me in terms of its ability to move quickly on things, and I just want to make sure that if we've got some projects that could use some funding, that we are competitively involved in this process. So who is it? Is it One Shoreline? Is it somebody else? Like who would I just want to say, hey, heads up, this is expected to come down soon. I'm just curious if anybody knows what the answer to that question is.
Well, I would suggest, first up on something like that, I would always suggest the supervisor, district supervisor. But you mentioned One Shoreline, and I think that might be a good. Well, of course, Ray is on the board of One Shoreline.
Okay.
But
all right, so fire off a letter to Ray or something.
For the record,
I think that.
Shoreline. Okay.
Sorry.
And in the audience, Mike O'Neill, who's Ray's.
Okay.
it's not to ascend one shoreline. And that is also by read of the statute that governs one shoreline. They are the agency for that.
Yeah, there was a remark made by the then director of public works when the whole Murata Bridge thing was being settled, and he said that the county had, at that time, he said the county had given up on Murata Road and all this stuff, that one shoreline was going to handle all that. So I don't know how that fight going to play out. The county planning department is, what I'm told, every time can't get important things on the long range planning list, is that they don't have the resources. So,
And Henry, you had a question?
Excuse me. Yeah, thank you very much, Lisa. There's a lot here. You went through quite a bit. Can I ask? There's one part of it. I think it was the California Coastal Commission was recommending a 100-year time frame, yet San Mateo County is going by a 50-year time frame, and essentially the county will approve it if they think it will last 50 years. Is that, and that's all they care about? Is that essentially?
The LCP said the minimum of 50 years, so they pretty much use 50 years. They tell the applicant.
What does that actually mean? What does that actually mean? That they?
Well, so you're supposed to
says it'll last for 50 years. Sorry.
The decision maker is supposed to decide that the project is safe from coastal hazards for a minimum of 50 years. So they tell the applicant to submit a study done by somebody who's qualified to determine that. Well, sometimes that's not really adequate, and it's not pursued far enough. As we know, when you appeal the project to the Coastal Commission, they come up with a different answer. But basically, what was interesting to me, because I was on the Planning Commission when they started adding these conditions of approval, I might have had something to do with that. And the other commissioners had never seen or heard of anything like this, and they were shocked that they were asking, by putting this condition on a permit, they were telling this applicant that if the bluff eroded and their house was in danger in less than 50 years or whenever, that they would have to move it. And they were pointedly asking the applicant, do you understand this? They wanted to make sure they understood that they were happy enough with their house only having a 50-year time span, whereas most people know a house, 100 years. I mean, they redevelop. It just goes on forever. And so it's not realistic to think this 50 years is enough. So.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Can I ask one? Last council, you got.
Do you believe, hi Lisa, do you believe that any of the issues associated with any of the coastal erosion have to do with the lack of enforcement of laws or regulations that already exist? It's just that nobody's enforcing laws against break walls or illegal armoring or anything like that.
Well, on Princeton Shoreline, that was the case. Nobody was enforcing it. People along there just did whatever they wanted. But the bluff's not very tall there. If the bluff is taller, then, they generally did come in to get a permit. And like you saw there at FMR, where the county said, oh, the beach is plenty wide, not going to be a problem. just put your rocks on there. And then other people, if even, down there at the Seal Coast Staircase, clearly there was an initial permit back in the early 80s, but then since then, the Coastal Records Project, they have all these photos over the years of what the shoreline looked like, and you can see what this evolution of what happened there without permits. So I don't know, there's a whole range. And then the other thing, there was the buildings in Princeton that got approved to be built right next to the shoreline, and it was clearly not safe. And yeah, like I say, and no enforcement whatsoever that I'm aware of for any of it, deteriorated or illegal or anything.
I haven't commented yet, but I'm going to go to the public. Ed Lorenas, you're here and you haven't spoken today, so I'm going to recognize you next. Ed, are you still available?
Yes, sorry, I had to unmute my phone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Couple things. First, I'd just like to make a few comments on what was said, and then I'd like to read to you what I read to the Planning Commission regarding this topic. Often, enforcement is a result of actions taken by organizations such as Surfrider, Committee for Green Foothills, sometimes even the Coastal Commission itself. And the same with changing the conditions of approval. An example would be the home that Lisa presented, where the red home on the bluff side was moved back as a result of the erosion that was happening there. That house that was developed there, that eventually was built there, the reason that house was given a permit where the owners had to give up the right to coastal armoring was a result of appeals taken by Surfrider and others at the Coastal Commission hearing. Planning rubber stamped the approval of that house. I'm happy to see that the trend is slowly going towards advising the builders and the homeowners that this is a potential problem, and then also going forward with saying you will not be allowed to put the armoring there. That seems to be a trend that's happening, and I'm hopeful for that. So let me quickly read you this short comment I read to the Planning Commission. And again, I'd like to thank Lisa for an excellent presentation and showing the legacy problems that we have here on the coast. So, no question, this is a complex problem that requires protection of public and private properties. These problems are only going to get worse due to climate change and resulting sea level rise. Coastal armoring is a government sanctioned taking from the public. Sometimes the loss is immediate due to placement of armoring on public lands, and other times it takes years. It happens years later as the structures fail. The Montero State Marine Protected Area shoreline, where Pearl Point Bluffs, Fitzgerald Marine Reserve, and Montero State Beach are located, are littered with debris from failing armoring. Most importantly, the placement of hard armoring almost always causes loss of the beach in front of the armoring. This is a public taking with no mitigation possible other than removal of the armoring. Many of the projects coming before the Planning Commission represent opportunities to enforce, manage retreat, and modern methods of protecting coastal lands from erosion, such as living shorelines. And an example of that is the West Trail at Pillar Point Harbor. The most important action by permitting agencies is to deny permits for armoring and for development in areas that are at risk. And Lisa gave us several examples of this. Please use, and this is something I'm hoping that Midcoast can help with by communicating this to our supervisors and to the Planning Commission, is please ask them to use all available enforcement tools to protect our shorelines and continue efforts to add policy and legal tools that help protect our shorelines and the public's right to coastal access. That's all I have. Thank you.
Ed, would you please email that to us?
Yes, will do.
Okay, thanks. Sid Young.
Thank you, Lisa. As usual, you have really well-researched presentations. Maybe you can answer my question that it seems to me that the county is more in the business of selling permits than they are of protecting our bluffs or I mean, I'm specifically thinking of that block that you showed on slide 22, and maybe you can put it back up really quick. But in Seal Cove, they have approved about 4 homes that I'm aware of to be built on that block, where there used to just be 2 houses for decades. And two of the existing homeowners don't even know that the county will not, help to maintain access along Ocean Boulevard if the cliff erodes further. It seems to me that they shouldn't be giving out extra permits to new builders when they're not planning to fix what's already, eroding and closely, cliff retreat, for instance. They're not dealing with it. They're not talking about it. And they certainly are not letting the current homeowners know why roads are being closed or anything. Just this week, a fire truck tried to come down my street where they've put a sawhorse at Del Mar and Ocean and on San Lucas. And the person who lives in the sort of like crumbling house on the corner of San Lucas and Ocean had a medical emergency, and the fire truck couldn't even get there. So, I'm just wondering, why does the county, they're so negligent in letting neighbors know these issues, and yet they're willy-nilly passing out new permits to build? Do you have any, thoughts on that?
I wouldn't use the word willy-nilly. So I do, I'm fully aware of the change in that one block. A lot of houses have been built there recently, but it's not because the county is selling permits. It's that the county is required to allow private property owners to build if they fit the zoning regulations. You can't just say no. They'll just get sued.
Well, they haven't told the existing neighbors that have been there since the 60s in the house the little house at 919 Ocean has two houses going up on either side of it. He was not aware until I mentioned your slideshow.
He was aware. He was in touch with Lenny Roberts about that development. And I think basically my question to you would be, what do you expect the county to do in a landslide prone area adjacent to 100-foot cliff? What is the county's responsibility? I mean, there's only so much you can do against Mother Nature.
I'm not expecting them to put in riprap or any of that, but I really think it's completely disingenuous of them to pass out new permits to people that might just be building spec homes they want to sell off in a hurry, and the next person thinks, well, the house was built, they were allowed to build it. Not everybody reads their disclosure packages very well. That's my point.
Okay, so if you don't mind, I'd like to make some comments, raise some questions. At least I do not expect you to answer these, but I do want to suggest a course for future action depending upon the council's sentiment. One question I have is, why isn't the property owner liable for the cleanup of the wayward riprap that's cascading down the beach and blocking access? I don't understand how they cannot be. I also don't understand why the county is waiting to adopt a more stringent guideline for the safety element when it seems that the safety of people and their property is in fact already at risk. What I would suggest is the county has to stop all development on these beaches until such time as it adopts the policy that's needed. That's just a thought. We call it a question. Claire Forrest, an article from Grist today, that basically said statewide, we're in a situation where it appears that we're protecting the investments of the rich at the expense of the average taxpayer. Okay. We also are experiencing, as this is pointed out, loss of use of the beach, including I think she called it lateral access walking along where the sand used to be. And I'm concerned we're creating a taxpayer liability because the people who have built these homes and are told, you can't do X and Y, are they required to escrow funds, which will in the future pay for the cleanup? Or are they just going to abandon the asset and leave the rest of us stuck with the bill, which seems a moral hazard of the highest degree? You're going to take risk because the rest of us are going to bear the cost of it. It doesn't seem right. So my suggestion, depending on what the council wants to do, is that just as we did for telecommunications and we're going to be doing for stormwater, this is a viable subject for a report from the council. You know, if we're a grand jury, you know, it would be a grand jury report. So I'll leave it up to those members of the council who have interest to raise their hands and so forth. But I could definitely see the MCC doing some research, gathering and building upon what these have done, and producing a report with requests for action. I'm always looking at the money. I'm that kind of guy, but there's an equity issue here. You know, there's a fairness issue here, and there's a monetary issue here, and it just doesn't seem, based on what Lisa's saying, that things are being handled in a fair way. Your point about property owners have the right to develop, well, fine, but not at public expense, right? And not at public damage to access and so forth. So I'd welcome a group forming itself, subcommittee, to work on this. And I don't see any other public comment. So with that,
Are we having we're having a retreat?
we're having a retreat. It probably is worth bringing up at the retreat whether this is worthy of council subcommittee building on a report. Okay, and certainly anything can be brought up at the retreat. This is something of those topics. So Lisa, thanks very much for your time and and efforts.
I just want to say, I'm gonna be very interested in, the one shoreline, discussion. And I think that we should, hold off, maybe until after we.
Well, that's May 17th.
I would think that,
Okay, yeah.
if I may, I think the Surfers Beach, those big issues are different from my last page on this thing. I'm focused on more of the Montera Moss Beach scope, where it's been totally no attention paid at all, and drawing attention to that. And also, since Steve had said that the county does have the power to enforce the maintenance and to see how that goes. And I will definitely keep in touch with anything I find out. And also for the council to keep in mind, when you get referrals for coastal, properties that are near the bluff edge, to keep this in mind as you make your comments.
That's a good point. Claire, you haven't said anything, and I know you were a sponsor of this. Are you still there? Do you want to comment?
I'm still here. You know, when Lisa has something to present, she doesn't need a lot of help. So this has been all Lisa. I did absolutely practically nothing, but I am so appreciative of her doing it.
Okay. So with that, I'd like to move on. I have an issue here for topics and process for the MCC retreat. But before we go there, I would like to bring up the items on consent agenda that were all pulled. And so let me just bring up the issue of the minutes. I know Kimberly wanted to pull the minutes. Who else? There was somebody else that had a comment. Claire had a comment. So would you two please make your comments on the minutes?
Yeah, I don't have them in front of me, but I was at the meeting. I was a voting participant and I was there in person, so he has me down there as not being there, so I was. And then Ray Mueller's name is spelled wrong. That's as far as I got.
Kimberly? Okay, so Ray Mueller's name is spelled wrong and he's at the meeting.
Okay. Sorry, Scott. So there were a few things also. I noticed that the liaison to the supervisor, Mike, it says that he is the supervisor. I'd like to clarify.
Let him catch up, because otherwise.
I might have written that. Okay.
He's not a supervisor. He's the liaison to the supervisor.
So say that again.
Mike O'Neill is the liaison.
Okay. Okay.
For the MCC, the supervisor.
Not supervised. Yes, that is correct. Okay, go ahead. What else?
And the same things Claire mentioned. There were some
Misspellings. Okay.
Misspellings and names.
Okay.
I don't have it in front of me either.
Okay, sounds good.
So you'll have to resubmit those for the next meeting.
Okay. What about a font? You said in the email to me you wanted a font.
Don't worry about the font. I fixed the font. It wasn't standardized, but I obviously paid attention.
Sometimes I wrestle with Google Docs and it won't allow me. And
well, you can do them in your own and upload them.
I don't have anything. I have to use that. So.
All right.
May I ask a question about the minutes?
Yeah.
The process itself.
Yes.
Does somebody review it before you submit it? Or? would it be helpful to have one of us just look over
Yeah,
it when
okay.
you're ready? And
All right. So I'll make you an editor.
I
I will
would
share
nominate
with you.
Kimberly as a
Okay.
great.
I'm happy to do
leader.
that.
You got it. Send it over to you.
She's improved everything.
If
we've ever
that
done.
helps you.
I'm dyslexic. Okay, it's a miracle that I can do that.
Oh, now it comes out.
Okay, so let's just
Okay.
doing things like that's just
Okay. Overall, I think the note taking is good. It's just
okay.
my-
If I go direct, a lot of times Blair says go from your notes, so I've been doing that.
I have another thing you might want to consider.
Okay.
Zoom has notified me that they now have a minute, a service that will create minutes. I don't know how it works or how good it is, but you might want to look at it.
Okay,
Look at that.
Anyway.
so we also talked about chat GPT. Trying to just
Oh, don't do
make
that.
do it.
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
No.
Okay.
All right.
So Zoom can make minutes.
All right.
They
We'll
say
look
they
at
can.
that.
You can look
We'll
at
see.
it.
We'll see that. All right. The next thing I wanted to bring up, since we pulled it for agenda, we'll now need a vote of council. I had proposed, I had never done a council resolution before, so I did a council resolution to allow us to proceed to spend not to exceed $750 to buy emergency telecommunications equipment. The equipment must conform to the recommendations of the Coast Side Emergency Response Team. Let me share my screen. Sorry, not doing that. Can you see the letter that I'm trying to bring up here? Is this letter visible?
Partially.
Yes.
Yeah, there you
All
go.
right. And part of the reason I'm doing this is that I can't believe I'm an elected public official and we do not have emergency telecommunications equipment. I feel like I'd be derelict in my duty if I don't at least make this recommendation. And if the council chooses not to spend the money, that's the council's decision, but I'm not gonna sit there and not do nothing. When, people were coming by my house, worried about trees falling on them, getting flooded out, it was a mess. So, I had Scott Pine and I had several emails with him and, Harry Tilley of Coast Side Surge describing the types of gear we should buy. They have a handout that I posted back in January when I first brought this up. It said what kind of equipment we should get. So what I'm opening to discussion with the council is, do you want to do this, or do you think it's unreasonable? We won't use it. Scott will get us training. Is this something you think we do not have to do? That's the question. So I think we do have to do this.
I'm going to recommend that we have Scott come back. This was just rushed in. It was on consent. We didn't really have enough time, I don't think, to really talk about it. It's all new to me. If I might say, maybe start out with one radio. I don't know, because for some people it may just sit. You've got turnover of council members, so they have to be retrained. And then, I don't know. I think.
So you want to append it, as they say, for future agenda.
I think so. I think that way we can have a more in-depth discussion, a better understanding of what we're talking about.
Right now.
Scott is prepared to vote yes.
I'm prepared to go yes.
Do you have anything else you want to say?
It sounds like a good idea to me. If we never use it, that is awesome. But if we do use it,
That's even awesomer.
no. Well, I mean, the reason we're using it is because there's an emergency. I hope we never have an emergency, but you got to have something to fall back on. This is the only thing that you've presented, and therefore I'm voting yes for it.
All right, Kimberly, your comment?
I'm comfortable with the letter you drafted. However, like Dan,
Resolutions and authorization to spend.
the
Okay.
resolution, yes,
Right.
sorry. Like Dan, though, I don't feel that I personally know enough. I'd have to review what you sent whenever you sent it.
It was posted back in January.
So I'd have to go back and refresh my memory.
All right, so you're proposing delay.
I'm proposing delay just because I'd like to better understand the equipment and how it's used and whether it will actually function for instance, someone like me who is a little out off the beaten path. Am I going to have to
That's the point.
leave my house to use
The
it?
point is it should work for people off the beat path. That's why we're getting it, but okay. Guys, did you want to comment on this proposal?
Sure. I mean, I'm already sold on it, but I do think it's something that I think we should try to really have consensus on it. So, if we haven't had it to this point, I'm sure we can go another month to, talk about it before we pull the trigger on it. So I'm fine with, talking about it in our next meeting, although I would in principle vote for it today.
What would you want to know?
If we vote on this today, we vote yes or no?
If we vote on it today, I'll vote yes, but I think in deference to where, Kimberly and Dan are, I think we should probably just wait.
All right, Anne, you want to comment on this?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I would like a little more information as well, and what our roles are going to be, because I think that it is important to understand exactly how are we going to utilize the equipment and what is our role, because there are people who have been trained in CERT. I am not. So, I mean, training would be very important to me, clearly, to be able to use this appropriately, but just to know what exactly our roles are in the emergency. Is it necessary to have every single member have this, or would just several members have them? Something like that. That would just be my question.
Blair?
I was prepared to say go ahead and do it, because I do think we should make some investments with our finances, and this is certainly a good cause in a way. But I also have a concern about liability. Whenever you offer a service or offer a resource to the community, if it doesn't go well, there may be some liability. And I think maybe that would be another thing to look at before we vote.
Okay. Well, I'm getting the sense of the council that, we should delay it, and bring it back for further consideration. It's funny you mentioned liability. My concern is just the opposite, that if we didn't do it, we'd be liable. Sid Young, you want to make a comment?
Just a quick one. Since it sounds like you're going to delay it for more in-depth research on this, I think you should talk to Michelle Weil, who is a CERT trained person for Seal Cove, and she could tell you her pros and cons of using the telecommunication device, walkie-talkie, whatever you want to call it. And also, how many members of the MCC are CERT trained? That's another thing.
I am. Anybody else?
Okay. I just wanted to say that, if you're going to invest in them, they should take the CERT training. Thanks.
I don't think they need the whole CERT training. My position in Scott's is he will train us on the radio rules. I'm not going to take the whole, just get it a broken building thing.
Maybe
Michelle,
talk to Cynthia Sherrill then at Coastside Fire Department. She's on the board of.
I disagree. I think you all should be trained in CERT. And you should do it as soon as you can, because you need to understand what the emergency process is. You need to understand what, FRS does, and then it goes to the ham radio, then it goes to the radio KHMB and back. So if we don't have input, if we don't have input on the very interstitial level, we cannot report back and get help to you. So I recommend that you get trained in any way you want. Harry, the Y, Iseltine, he'll come out and he'll train you personally. CCWD just got trained, their entire staff. They can't use a ham radio unless there's an emergency, but they all got trained.
That was CCWD?
Yes, Coastside County Water District.
All right, thank you. Thank you
You're
all.
welcome.
All right. The
Thank you.
sense of the council is to delay on this item. So we're going to delay on this item.
Well,
there's
table it and have an agenda item brought up with Scott to come back and give us a little bit of maybe just
I don't know if it'll be Scott, but we'll get something.
or whoever, is appropriate.
So the other thing is, in doing research on stormwater, I discovered Ocean Colony had no problems in the last storm. And so I talked to the president of the Homeowners Association, and he explained why it was properly engineered and it's properly maintained. And they have several legal entities involved in those golf courses. And I must admit, I do not remember all of them. Some entities own the golf courses, some own the housing, roads and drainage, and it's all split up. But they have something called a reserve report, which describes the assets they own and maintain into stormwater, how much they spend on them, how many miles they have. And I asked Bill Balson, who's the head of the homeowners association, could I get a copy of that so we can contrast it with what the county's doing or not doing that is leaving us with the stormwater issues we're facing here. And he said, I can't give it to you, but this guy, he called the president, the community manager, Jim Pryor of Ocean Colony Association, could give it. And he thought that if we gave a letter from MCC requesting a copy of their reserve report for us to include in our stormwater research, we could get it. So I wanted to write that letter, not as an individual, but I wanted to have it sent from the council to request that information. And so I will ask the council, now that it's no longer a consent item, I would make a motion that we send this letter requesting the reserve report. Do I have a second?
Sure.
Second. Discussion. Dan?
So, I know, Greg, that your style is you like to grab a bunch of data and have it like a library to access and to compare when we need it. And I see this as kind of like, the whole stormwater, you're just kind of like accessing information to try to compare. We may be able to pick through something and find out something good that they're doing down there. Is that what we're doing here? I mean, there's always could be a consequence of taking, as minor as it could be, of a step like this. I guess I'm just not clear on what.
Should I repeat what I already said?
I mean, what are you guys doing and how much does it cost?
It doesn't cost us anything.
Not us, but
But it's such a complicated. The point is, it's such a complicated issue that you're going to get their methods there may not be appropriate for here. I think we should.
There's only one way to know. You gotta ask, right?
Well, I don't see how.
Well, who's going to judge?
Information helps us.
I think
there's a success story right on our doorstep. They're downstream of Moonridge, and they didn't have.
They did the work. They already figured it out, right?
So you don't want to send a letter? All right. Well, you can decide later. Well, let's go around. Scott, what do you think about sending a letter?
It sounds great. I mean, it's informational.
All right, Kimberly, what about sending a letter?
I'm kind of mixed. I feel like, couldn't we just casually ask?
I tried that.
Okay.
That's why I was asked to send a formal letter.
So I guess I'd want to know what the goal is, because if we're collecting data from Ocean Colony, are we collecting data from other places as well?
I'm doing everything I can. Yes, we are. Okay. From Moonridge. Okay. From GCSB. I also have already, I would cover this under council activity. I already have an email from Montero Water and Sanitary District with pictures and an explanation of their stormwater problems. I have letters from people in El Granada. I have emails from people in Montero. So I'm gathering all this information for a report on stormwater infrastructure, just as we did for telecommunications. And I hope
I'm not opposed to it.
All right. Ann, you're a remote participant. What's your thought on sending the letter?
I support it fully. I think it's important to get this information. So I would definitely support the letter.
Claire, comment?
I think there's nothing wrong with the letter. It's fine. You can open up cans of worms depending on who you ask what about. But I think it's fine. Go ahead and do it.
Gus?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that you tried to get it informally first, so if that didn't work, then I think we send the letter. Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so I call for a vote.
Okay, Dan?
Yes.
Okay, Ann? Ann's voting, right?
Yes.
And Claire?
Yes.
Kimberly?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes. Okay. good, Gus.
Gus?
Yes.
Okay, vote yes, so 7-0, send the letter.
Okay. So that letter will go out and I'll take care of it since I've already got it, so don't worry about it.
Okay.
Let me see if I can pull up the next item on the agenda.
I do have a question though. Why is Scott's name on the letter?
He's secretary. I thought it was.
Does the secretary's name go on all the letters?
I thought it should. I don't know. You tell me.
I don't think so. No, it's not from. It's not because he's the
Yeah.
secretary. This is a statement of the council.
So just me?
Yeah, just you.
Okay, I can fix that. All right. We had a brief discussion on Monday. Claire and Ann and I. Wait a minute. Michelle and Sid, you had questions or comments on the letter? What's going on here?
Well, you already voted, but I was just going to say that Half Moon Bay is not really in our jurisdiction. If you want to, include Half Moon Bay, you should at least contact Moz and find out about their stormwater issues. They had a whole report back in, I think it was 2016, and only 50% of it was ever funded for, capital improvements and stuff. But you might try to find out more from him to see how much of it has actually been done.
Sid, it's already done. It's already done. It's in process. The Half Moon Bay capital budget for stormwater is 12.4 million, of which 10.4 million is unfunded on the current plans. And there's more that will be developed. So yes, I am doing what you suggest. Michelle, did you have a comment? Or that hand was left over from something else. Okay. So now I hope to go to discuss the retreat, because it occurred to several of us that a productive retreat should actually have some preparation, okay, rather than we just all show up and talk. Okay. So Ann and Claire and I met, and I took some notes. Everything I'm about to share with you can be changed, but here are the thoughts. We entertain Ray, or maybe Mike, an opening statement from the county, whatever you guys want to tell us. We've been loading Mike up with action items. I don't know, maybe the retreat isn't necessarily the place to report on progress or lack thereof, but you could, whatever you guys wanted to do. And I thought to let them go first, but we could also have you speak later after we've gone through a few hours of other stuff.
Isn't Supervisor Horsley coming? I'm sorry.
I don't think so. No, I don't know
Mueller.
about breakfast, and I don't think he's
Mueller.
back.
Supervisor Mueller will not be coming?
He has agreed to come. He has not promised to spend 4 hours on this stuff. It was tough getting this on his schedule. One of the reasons I put him first was because he was respectful of his time, okay? And then let's discuss that again, though, about how long he might be here and what we want to discuss in front of him while we have him, as opposed to longer discussion when he might have left, okay?
Did you send me a copy of this document?
Yeah, of course we will.
Okay.
As soon as it's agreed. Okay. And then, as is traditional, we normally have every council member speak to their priorities. I can't remember what you called it, Claire, hopes and fears and dreams and wishes or whatever. So we could go around the table, 5 minutes a council member. That would take about 40 minutes with each of us speaking to our priorities and wishes and stuff. So that was the second thought. And then I don't know about sequence here, but there are a couple of other topics. One is what I've called communications protocol here, about how we work with the county and how we work with ourselves. And this might be in front of you, not necessarily Ray, but when we had, what was her name? Heather Wilson was here for a brief time. I wrote her and I made some suggestions about how we might be able to help bundle together issues and prioritize them and help her get things organized so that every time the phone rang, she didn't necessarily jump on it, how we could vet requests for her if it was necessary. We can't stop people from calling Ray or Gina or you, but the question is, what's effective? If we all get on the phone and start pestering people, what's going to get done? And this relates to Ray and Gina and you in terms of how you want to receive things and organize them for action. Another question is who logs issues where? If we're all independently calling Mike and Gina and Ray and saying, do this and do that, how do we know what each one of us has done and asked for? Where is it logged? Who tracks the issues for the MCC in terms of progress? Who reports on issue status, progress, when and where? I'm looking at you, Mike, but you know, we would report. I don't know. Depending on what the issue is. Claire brought up that we could use some internal training on how we sponsor an agenda item, what to prepare, where we have to put it. Maybe a few more people could be empowered to add things to the website like I do. We could have a discussion on the general conduct of MCC meetings. Sometimes there are concerns about decorum or things being too rushed or whatever, you know. This is a collaborative effort, so everybody gets a chance to talk about how they think things are being run, okay, and maybe change them. We also have an issue with outreach to the community. Claire brought this up strongly, and there are several reasons for that. Claire, speak up if you want to, but one of them is we're going to need new members. And we can't just be sitting here in Zoom meetings on Wednesday nights and 24 people are attending. We need to be out there at, like Claire was suggesting, any event or fair or conference that's held, talking to people and showing them, you know, this is what we do for you. Would you be interested in getting involved? And also to hear what they think. All right. So we might want to talk.
That's what we do naturally. You know, everybody does it at their level now. I do that. We all, I think historically, new people, you know, will kind of slowly get into that.
The proposal is to discuss this at the retreat as well, about whether we do more or how we do it.
Definitely need this.
Okay, so.
And we need to be able to say what we do in like 3 bullet points. Go to a fair, have something behind you. This is who we are. This is what we do. This is how we help you.
Well, we did that about a year ago. I remember Michelle and Joe Grant worked on it, and we got a banner and we attended an event.
I was there.
Okay, yeah, Dan, you were there.
I was there.
Yeah. So more of that. And then there's emergency communications, which we can discuss again later. If not at the retreat, some other agenda topic. We just covered it. And then I had some observations on things that could be discussed at the retreat. Just, you know, thoughts I've gathered. I had a presentation concept and then a question about follow-up. And before I get to the list of the issues, the presentation concept is this. We invite the public and each of us to prepare a single subject slide. So, for instance, and this is, I just made this up, I could put together a slide called Evacuation is a Disaster and have a few bullet points showing how we're all trapped here and we're going to be joined by a whole bunch of visitors who don't know what the protocols are in an emergency and we can't get out. Okay, and raise that as an issue, hopefully for some actions and some recommendations. So that can be a single subject slide, right? If we have a bunch of single subject slides, I think the odds go up that Ray and Mike will be able to retain the information, right? Just bullet point by bullet point. And so I would suggest that every council member be given an opportunity, as well as the community, to contribute to the development of some single subject slides, and we present them early in the meeting. Right.
I want to argue that if you want retention, keep it simple. If it's overcomplicated and too long of a list.
I just said one slide per topic.
I know, but how many single slides for single slides for single issues?
Well,
take it out up fast.
We'll have to referee that, and I think Dan and Claire and I can discuss this at a Monday meeting when we normally plan the agenda. So the next Monday we could have a meeting and go through all the ideas that people have generated, council members and the public, and come up with it. But I just thought that was kind of an interesting idea. I don't know what the council thinks.
On that,
yeah,
I think it promotes creativity. I think it's a good idea. It makes you think about something and put it down hard, right? It's
okay. I'm open to other comment, by the way. I don't want to just keep rambling on here. And then here are some of the observations, and this might get back to what Harvey was saying also, but maybe we can cover that later. But we don't have staff, yet we have a population larger than half of the Bay. Okay, Half Moon Bay has been somewhat cooperative on some issues, depending on the issue. We'll talk about the sewer issue later. There's a perception that the Midcoast is underfunded compared to the tax revenues we contribute. I think Sid was the one who pointed out to me that there's an extra 17% of tax revenues that goes direct to the county because we're not a city. Otherwise, it would go to Half Moon Bay or whatever city we were in. But based on my review of the roads around here, okay, and the stormwater situation and so forth, we don't seem to get the same attention that if we were a city, we were.
Maintenance funding also, yeah.
Right. There's the issue of the Half Moon Bay lawsuit. I don't know if that's appropriate for the retreat. But I can tell you that it's hampering Sam right now. And we'll get into that in council member activity. We have a telecommunications report. One of the thoughts is that we form our own community fiber network. In order to do that, we need to form some kind of legal entity. We need to have a study done that says, how much money would it cost to put this thing together? So we have to ask for money for a study. Now, there's a bunch going on there. The community, the mid-mile broadband initiative in the state. A bunch of things happening in our favor that say that it'll make it easier for us to do that. But we can discuss that. There's going to be a stormwater report. The process should be similar to telecommunications. We're going to need a study. As far as we can tell, there is no stormwater master plan for our area of the county, and perhaps not for the county as a whole. There is for a bunch of cities.
I know Civic has stormwater.
Of course you do.
I think incorporated cities do. I don't know if the county has it.
Yeah, so, and we think we need it, and that's what the report will substantiate. There's an issue, one of my favorites is that we have lots of infrastructure deficits, we don't have enough money. There's an issue about water supply and water security, which is threatened by the new developments we have. The Bay Delta Plan and SFPUC's water supplies face a 59% cutback in the third year of a drought. And that assumes that we can continue to conserve an extra 17% per capita over what we do now. So that's a 76% water reduction, right? One way or the other. That to me is significant and raises issues about development. There's wildfire management. We did a bunch of stuff a year or two ago. We spent a bunch of money. Of course, they got some trees cleared. Parks did some work in Quarry Park. We had a simulation study. And then what? I haven't heard anything. So I think we need a study group on wildfire.
Well, Quarry Park's ongoing, doing work. It's not as fast as I would like it, but I mean,
So those are just some of the topics I think we could cover at retreat. Okay, that's all I'm saying. And then I think we need to plan for the follow-up on what we discuss. And that's where I'm nominating that we produce these reports or letters based on the issues that get raised, asking for action, and give them to Mike and call him every couple hours and see how he's doing. Okay? That's a joke, right? Okay. But I also think we ought to have a database of the issues and requests, because we started putting together spreadsheets on stuff a few years back, and they just don't get maintained. They're not multi-user, right? Who's got the spreadsheet? Who's got the current version? I've been working with work order systems, bug tracking systems, and request for action systems for 50 years, but I don't want to sound like I'm old. And we don't have one. It's just absolutely amazing. The county doesn't have one. There is something in planning called Cella, which is kind of like what I'm looking at, but these things are available dirt cheap, and I think we ought to have one, usable by the county staff and by us as things get assigned and progress and so forth. All right. Well, so those are the thoughts that I'm proposing. So now we will stop me talking and go around the council, and let me start by asking the remote participants first for a change. So, Gus, what do you want to say about planning for the retreat and these ideas?
I mean, I think that's a pretty comprehensive list. I mean, I don't have anything that's not already on there, so I really appreciate you guys putting that together.
Okay, you'll bring the donuts.
Happy to bring the donuts.
Okay. Anne, did you want to comment?
Yeah, I think this is really good, and I really like the addition of the single slide because that will give us an opportunity to discuss, topics that perhaps weren't already on the agenda. So I think that's great, and bringing the public to allow them to do the same. I think that'll be really important. And then, just as an aside, I will have an agenda item coming up, but it won't be probably until next month regarding the changes to the firehouse over in Moss Beach.
Okay, yeah, we will cover that, but the fact that you bring that up is a good thing. There are going to be automatically agenda items coming on some stuff, so we don't necessarily have to discuss everything at the retreat. We just merely have to identify the priorities, and we can dive in on a couple of them. But if there's follow-up on the shoreline and the harbor, that's a whole nother meeting, right? A whole other report, okay? If the lighting issue, which keeps being a thorn in our side, the firehouse, those can all be future agenda items. So the retreat doesn't have to attempt to resolve everything, merely to sort of try and prioritize and set the landscape. Claire?
I don't have much to add. I might have something to subtract because I think we'll be there for several days if we do all of this. But I think it's a good place to start. We can pare it down or not as you choose.
Yeah, just to respond to that, I don't know that we want to spend a lot of time on telecommunications for stormwater, for instance, because we're going to have full reports on those. But I do want to raise the issue that we're going to need money. We're going to have to do a stormwater master plan for the county of San Mateo. Somebody's going to have to study that.
But that's not, I'm sorry, but we don't have to do it.
All we need to do is have one slide and say this should be a priority and ask them to get the money.
Right, but not we. The MCC is not going to do a master plan.
No, we are not doing a master plan. That's a TPW planning, one shoreline, somebody's responsibility. That needs to be figured out. All right, but okay, thank you, Claire. People in the room, Dan, comments on the scope and so forth.
Well, it's a lot. I think many are good. I'll be honest with you, I didn't read every detail. But some of them, I think it'll be a challenge. Some of them require so much kind of detail to understand really what we're really trying to chew on. So, just keep it at the surface level on some of this discussion. Basically, what we, each council member personally, is passionate about having achieved in 2023. Right? At least get some substantial traction in some areas.
So what you just said leads me to ask this question. If we come up with 10 single slideshows, right, from the public and members of the council, would it make sense to present those and then have the council members 5-minute piece go around when some of the topics have already been presented? Or do you want the council members to speak first for 40 minutes and then present issue slides?
Council members first and offer community input after. We gotta. We're starting at 9. We're starting at 9. What time do you plan on?
6. We're starting at 6 on May 7th.
I'm sorry. Okay, I was looking at a different agenda.
Right here.
Okay, so I'm gonna have to work. We're gonna have to get through it, and I gotta work the next day. Okay, so I don't want to walk. I have to be the last one out of here because I lock the door a half hour after we stop this meeting. Mm-hmm. So I'm just trying to manage time, so that we can get through it.
Maybe we should have a hard stop. We don't finish, schedule another one. Because 4 hours.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you want to stop at? How many? We start at 6.
Yeah.
Stop at 9.
Yes. That would give us 3 hours, and then see how we get on this.
I think we in the past we've had a policy of like a hard stop at 9:30, so that we're not going late into. Every night.
Where you get
target it. Try our best, and if it looks like hey, we need another 20 minutes, we address it to the council at the time. But, so I would recommend, try and stop at 9:30.
Okay. Scott, comments on this?
It seems like a lot. I like the idea of a hard stop. And now everything, I've already started on one of them. I'll get back when we do the council member activities. I'll let you know what I'm into.
Okay. Hard stop on retreat. Kimberly?
Okay, so I apologize, I don't think I've seen this newest version of the list. And it's probably because I'm trying to play catch up after being away for a month. So I need to look at the list more closely, but what I can say right now is that I looked at this retreat as more of a strategic planning time. And this feels like everything in the kitchen sink is all thrown in, and I'd like to laser in on 3 to 4 things that we hope to achieve this year, and just really focus on the way we plan to get from point A to point B. And I don't think we're there yet.
How do you know which 3?
Well, I think you have to have this session.
We have to have the first session to figure it, because here it is.
So that's my next question. Is this 4 hours, the retreat, that's it? There's nothing after that?
No, we can schedule additional meetings, and certainly every regular meeting. I got the same advice, by the way, from Mike O'Neill, from Don Horsley. You can't have 10 things, they said. And so here's my reply on that. We live in a community where people have dozens of things that are not being addressed. And I don't view it as my position to subtract from their needs. I view it as my position to forward to the county valid requests for action, right? And then the county's going to have to decide what they're not going to do. Now, I agree about prioritizing, but there's no way I'm going to say, no, we're not going to talk about dark sky lighting because that's not the top 3. I'm not going to do that.
It's not to say that there are not other important items, but I think that you pick, and it can be more than 3. I just think it has to be less than 5 or less.
That's what the retreat will sort out.
Yeah.
Well,
some of them are not achievable, right? You just have to say, we can't do that. Scratch it. Or that's low hanging fruit. Definitely do that one, right?
Yeah.
Well, the other thing is there are 2 different things that you're discussing here, right? Community input on what the community would like to see us do and what we think we should do. And somewhere along the way, we need to have that community input to inform what we do at this retreat. And we don't, do we really have that?
Well, we have years of public meetings gathering input. We have us announcing at this meeting that we're looking for community input for the retreat.
And so have we had actual submissions of things from the community?
I have. I can't speak to what you guys have.
Okay. So I think that's one piece that we need to tease out is what are the things that rise to the top for the community first?
Okay. And that's part of the retreat.
I'm a little worried that it sounds like we're going into the retreat preparing for the retreat. And I think we should be prepared for it and have it outlined so that we can get through in the amount of time we have.
So what I think I hear you saying is we need to have a section in here where we just have public comment on priorities at the beginning of the retreat, in addition to the council members.
Yeah.
Okay. So we allow half an hour of that.
And I think your idea of, just a moment, Mike, I think your idea of the slides is a really nice creative way of doing that. And maybe you could ask community members to do that, but that's very time consuming.
Do one slide?
To do one slide, how many community members are going to come forward with one slide?
Well, what I would say to the community, hello community, as I've said to some of you already, you send us content and I'll put it on the slides.
Can't we just have bullet points?
Exactly, that's all I want. I
Okay.
just want bullet points.
One list of bullet points instead of 25 slides.
Let's hear what Mike is going to say.
I want to show you. I mean,
No, please go ahead.
yeah. Okay. I was on the school board for 14 years and the city council for 10. So I've been through many of these strategic plans. And generally the way and it was a full day. It wasn't, 3 or 4 hours after dinner or whatever. And we would all have an opening session where the council members or the trustees all kind of talked about what they thought. And then they would have scheduled on the Brown, because you have to post a Brown Acts agenda. It would be posted on the agenda that at 11:30 or noon, whatever, we are receiving public input. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Okay, and then the public had their opportunity to come in and give their input as to what's important to them. Then at that point, we usually had lunch because we were there all day. But then we would come back from lunch and the council would hash it out. Now, the closest thing you have to staff is probably me, okay? But, and I can't really type that fast, so I'm telling you that right now. But then we would hash it out, and then staff would actually come back in about the next council meeting or the meeting after and say, this is the work plan, okay? And so then that you as a council would approve the work plan. And I would suggest, I'm willing to stay the whole time, till whatever 10, whatever it is. And I would take these notes and then I could try to develop a work plan of what you want, because you have to remember, I have no control of Public Works. Okay, but Public Works is also in charge of Pescadero, Kings Mountain, and frankly, if 92 is closed, that moves up the priority, right? That's a major road, the same as if Highway 1 was closed. And you also are looking at the fact that the county's kind of figuring there is going to be reduction in funds next year due to a recession. Everybody keeps feeling that there's going to be a severe recession. We're having layoffs. San Francisco has a 30% vacancy rate in offices. Okay, so they're kind of figuring there's going to be a loss of income to the county is what they're predicting or feeling is going to happen. But that's above my pay grade. All right. So I would just encourage you to, start at the 6 or whatever you want to start, and then take and have a time where you guys just all kind of BS and shoot and visit. Okay. And then you kind of have public input. And then you get down into, limited public input of a half hour, 3 minutes each. If you have, gobs of people extended an hour or whatever, but then we hash out what are your guys' priorities. And right now, just given the emails I'm getting, I feel it's like this shotgun approach. Okay. And I can't deal with everything because there's a major issue going on down in Pescadero right now. And I'm with the Farm Bureau, Ag Advisory, Pacifica, and you guys. So I have to also take care of some of the stuff down there. Pacifica's pretty quiet, I gotta admit. But, so that's my advice to you, is to have some sort of initial visit with each other, see where your priorities are, hear from the public, and then you nail it down, and then we kind of figure out top, 5 or 10. If you want me to bring it back to another session or the next council meeting, get it to Greg, and he publishes it, and then you guys vote. This is the action plan you want and the priorities you want. Is it telecommunications? Is it stormwater or whatever? Because I'm going to be calling Public Works tomorrow to find out, is there even a map of the sewers and water and stormwater drains in this area?
Okay, great.
I don't even know if that's there.
So what I hear two parts, and the first part is more gathering information, and we'll have another part, whether it's another retreat or we just do it on ongoing council meetings to be discussed later. Len, did you want to comment on this retreat?
I think this is, it's almost 10 o'clock now. I think this is about the 5th time we've talked about preparing for the retreat in this council. I just, please, can we
Len, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, well, I combined this. So in the next agenda item, I was going to report that today I met with both people from county planning, people from Caltrans, and the Coastal Commission to talk about the roads and the projects there. It was a good meeting. I'll be following up with the ad hoc committee we have and look to give sort of an overall view of transportation at the retreat. That's my quick report.
Well, what's the sense of the council? Do you want to stop the meeting now? Yes. Getting frustrated here. You want to stop the meeting, or do you want to go through the rest of the update on council activities that we normally do?
I'm gonna say let's end this now.
Scott's in favor of ending it now.
I mean, I'm
Claire,
I'm good. Just so it's clear, if we can move through quickly, but we've been talking about stuff.
This is something we can talk about at the retreat. How do we structure the meetings? How do we decide what's enough? But right now we're in the middle of a meeting, and I think it's up to you, Greg, what we should do. But it seems like since we're in the middle of the meeting, we should finish it.
Well, we said we would adjourn at 10:15. So I will invite council activity reports.
Okay.
If we can adjourn sooner, that would be good. Remember, I can't leave until a half hour after.
I hear you. Scott, do you want to say anything? Council activity?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Like I said, one of the agenda items was follow the money, right? More money come out than come in. And there's a 218-page report on the finances of San Mateo County, and I downloaded and I looked at the whole thing. I didn't read it all. It doesn't give me exactly what I need, but I'm moving in that direction to figure that one out. And that's one of our.
Would you please add something to your investigation, which is how they can pass on the consent agenda tens, even $100 million items on the consent agenda at the Board of Supervisors?
Okay.
Just curious about that.
It's because they have staff.
Kimberly? Councilmember activity?
No.
Claire?
I don't think so. I wasn't ready for this part yet.
And you're muted, Ann.
Actually, you know what, Greg? I'd sort of like to know whether people are interested and are participating in that emergency thing.
Who would participate in the event that they're going to hold? Who would volunteer to show up? I will if the timing's right.
What's the date?
What's the date? Do you know, Claire? What was it?
I think they said the 10th of June.
Oh.
We would need to get some materials together. We'd have to get something set up. It would take a little bit of work. I just don't know if it's worth my pursuing it.
Summertime, we can't do every event. I'm not really,
Okay. Gus and Scott.
You mean on the emergency thing?
Show up at this.
I could probably do it.
Scott probably.
Yeah.
Well, Claire, you have some.
Okay, so we'll see what they say.
We'll give everybody a chance to raise their hand again later. It's still a month away. Len, did you want to skip your detailed report and do it at the retreat?
Yes.
Okay, great.
It'll be quick.
Okay. And then I will just mention that, and you've seen this if you followed your emails, we have now sent that telecommunications report to every vendor and every local agency on the coast, Harbor District, City, Half Moon Bay, whatever. Two of the vendors have replied, mostly pro forma. Some have not. I've made extra inquiries into the California Public Utilities Commission because I didn't get back from them. And in general, every agency I've written has supported the findings of the report and giving me a letter endorsing it, or promised to give me a letter endorsing it. I got one from Sam. Half Moon Bay's agreed to work with us on a community fiber network. So I would say that we're accumulating a basis of evidence, a fact foundation that seems to be shared and endorsed. On stormwater, they're still working on gathering the report. I reached out to the community via email. I posted something on Nextdoor. I have more than a dozen people who responded to me, and I'm getting, as I said earlier, I got photos and a write-up from Montero Water and Sanitary District. There's a community of people in El Granada. There's a community of people in Montero. And I'm hoping you'll get something out of Moss Beach for us, but we're going to be building a report on stormwater. The degree to which it's a problem, And as you all know, we met with CCAG and they said there's $500 million in stormwater master plans and $3 million a year to fund it. So. Yeah, but they also included San Mateo County in their list that they presented last week. And then Leslie's gonna skip the transportation group update. So future agendas, we have the retreat. And then Ann is saying she has something on the firehouse that she might come up with. Some of you were talking about doing something on Cypress Point. Any other suggestions? Or is there follow-up on the harbor that somebody wants to raise? Anything else for future agendas?
I do want to do that, but I don't want to approach it now.
Okay.
I'll get back to you on some items also.
Oh,
what
dark
is one?
sky or whatever was. Okay. All right. With that, I guess we call for a motion to adjourn.
Well, I'd say we adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Do we have to vote on adjournment?
I don't think we do.
All right. Thank you all.
Okay, we're adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
Recording stopped.